Ready when you are.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for coming to the meeting this evening, the extraordinary meeting of Council. You will notice that all the items are carried forward from the agenda of the 26th of November. The real advantage is that you've had 2 extra weeks to think about the contents and also to ask relevant questions of the officers. It seems to me that if we're going to get through this agenda, we're all going to need to be very focused. Ask questions as briefly as you can, and can you only ask questions that are going to influence the way you vote? Because I think that's particularly important in trying to control the amount of time we have. And again, in debate, if you can be as concise as you can. As we go along, as usual, I will make note of those who raise their hands and wish to ask questions, and I'll put their hands down and we'll ask them then in order to ask the questions. So if I put your hand down, don't stick it up again straight away.
Chairman.
Councillor Platt.
Excuse me, Chairman. I've got to leave at 20 to 6 to chair a parish council meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have given my apologies to James. And, yeah, thank you.
Okay, that's great. Okay, let's move on then to the agenda itself. First item is apologies.
I've received apologies from Councillor McDonough and Councillor Swindell.
Can I give apologies, Chair, from Councillor Fawley? You may arrive late, but I'm giving them at the beginning just in case.
Thank you very much. Any others? No. Okay, so we'll move on now to can we just have a roll call of everyone who's here, just to make sure that that we've got a note of everyone?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Councillor Allison.
Here.
Councillor Archer.
Here.
Councillor Atkin.
Here.
Councillor Bright.
Here.
Councillor Buckler.
Here.
Councillor Bull.
Here.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
Here.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
Here.
Councillor Buttle.
Here.
Councillor Chapman.
Here.
Councillor Cruz.
Here.
Councillor Donnelly.
Here.
Councillor Elliott. Councillor Fitzherbert.
Here.
Councillor Flitter.
Here.
Councillor Froggatt.
Here.
Councillor Finesse.
Here.
Councillor Gamble.
Here.
Councillor Hill.
Here.
Councillor Hobson.
Here.
Councillor Hughes.
Here.
Councillor Lees.
Here.
Councillor Tony Morley.
Here.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
Here.
Councillor O'Brien.
Here.
Councillor Purdy.
Here.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Here.
Councillor Raw. Councillor Rose.
You're muted. Councillor Roy, you're muted.
But so Councillor Rose here. I'll mark Councillor Rose. No. Councillor Salt.
Here.
Councillor Shirley.
Here.
Councillor Slack.
Here.
Councillor Statham.
Here.
Councillor Sutton.
Here.
Councillor Wayne.
Here.
And Councillor Wakeman.
Here.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We now move on to public participation. The first is some questions from Peter Dobbs, a resident of Ashbourne. Raised some questions on item 6, corporate plan performance and priorities. That should appear on your screen. Well, this is what happens when you get. Oh, okay. We'll deal with this item first. Then, as it's there, this is the letter from Ashbourne Town Council regarding the Green Man and Flax Head. All councillors should have received a copy of this in advance. So that would be useful for, I'll just give you half a minute to digest that. Obviously relating to item 9. Okay, thank you very much. Can we now go to Peter Dobbs's question? Which is that all councillors should have had a copy of that earlier. So, Councillor Purdy, I think
Thank you,
you were
Chair.
going to respond.
Indeed. Thank you for your question, Mr. Dobbs. The response is as follows. Derbyshire Dales District Council no longer employs an empty homes officer, and the resources dedicated to inspections is limited as it has to be undertaken as part of other activities, e.g. alongside the electoral registration canvass. The responses to the 4 questions from Mr. Dobbs are as follows. 1. 604 properties were visited between 25th of June and the end of September. 2. Of those 604 properties, 58 were in the area covered by Ashbourne Town Council. 3. Of those 58 properties in Ashbourne, all will be being charged council tax unless a discount or exemption has been identified and applied since the visit. None of them are charged at a higher rate due to being empty for over 5 years, although 20 are being charged an empty homes premium due to being empty for more than 2 years. Final question regarding the request for information relating to the derelict building known as Victoria Court Flats on Buxton Road. The council does not comment on the circumstances relating to individual properties due to the Data Protection Act. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you very much, Councillor Purdy. If we move now on to declarations of interest, there may be a few.
Yes, Chair, I have one, Councillor Furness. I have personal interest in items 7 and 8, being a director of Bradwell Community Land Trust, which is mentioned in both those items. It's non-pecuniary, it's just personal.
Thank you.
Chair, I will also to declare an interest in item 5, as my partner is a client of Nottingham Community Housing Association. It is a personal interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can we now move on then to the review of the Clean and Green service? Ash.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I don't intend to say a great deal about the report. I'm sure members have had time to digest it. I would, however, like to pick up on a few key points. And the first one is to stress that this review is to focus on the implementation, improvement and development of the service, with a keen focus on better communication, better use of technology, improved service delivery, and are having a positive impact on the Council's climate change agenda. In order to deliver this review, we are recommending that a core project team is formed to carry out the work, and this group will be supported by CLT, where monthly updates will be presented, but also to a subgroup formed of elected members from representatives from each of the parties to support the core team. In addition to that, I'm proposing that the Council uses an external consultant to help bring specialist knowledge and industry knowledge to the review, and also to challenge internal thinking. Happy to take questions, Chair.
Great. Anyone want to ask any questions? Again, if you can be as brief as possible with these, that would be greatly appreciated, because we've got a long agenda to get through. Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll try and be quite brief. I've just been reading through the scope of the actual review, and I note there's a review of key processes, working patterns, structures, roles and deployment of teams. Is there any anticipation that this might lead to a reduction in headcount or even outsourcing of some of the service?
Yeah, if I may, through you, there is no intention to reduce the headcount, Councillor Allison. It is looking at the improvement of the service. That might, however, and I don't know until we've gone through the process of reviewing it, whether some aspects of the service are better delivered in a different way, but it's not the intention to reduce the number of staff involved in the service.
Councillor Flitter. Councillor Flitter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, as you rightly say, Chair, we've had another couple of weeks to look at this report, and I was very in favour of this when if we'd have looked at it a fortnight ago. But the more that I read it, the more that I look into it, that I just have one or two misgivings. I'm wondering, I mean, I've looked down the scoping exercise and I think a very good job has been done here. But what I don't see in there is the ability to expand that scoping exercise, because what I'm really looking for is a subgroup or a project group that is going to be able to look at every single issue that arises and not be told that that is cross-purpose with another committee or another department. If we're going to do a good and honest review, we have to have a free rein. So I would like to see something in there that gives us that opportunity to expand the criteria and the scope if we can. I'm just looking at the relationship between the core project group and the subgroup, and I was a little bit worried about 2.8 because we talk about the information to-ing and fro-ing, and I realised that a lot of this information is going to be professional based, and it's going to take some understanding, and we may not get a grasp of everything. But the relationship between the two, I think, needs tightening a little bit, because in 2.8, it says the purpose of the group is to support the core group to provide feedback on its proposals and recommendations. Now, is that it's the subject, the subgroup, or the project group? I think it needs firming up a little bit more about how we're going to liaise, what the actual responsibilities are, and how are we going to transfer that information from one group to another without getting a feedback where we don't feel that probably we've not been listened to. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, if I could just try and address some of those points. Just to try and address your concerns there, Councillor Flitter, the way that I see the subgroup working and the difference between that and the core group is the amount of work and the timings from reviews. Having experience of the leisure review and more recently the waste review, there's a significant amount of time during the week that you spend working on aspects of the review. And I'm not aware that all members would be able to commit to that amount of time in a week. So the core group would essentially be doing the work throughout the week, and then we would meet ideally in person, but if not, via a Zoom meeting to discuss the work that we've carried out and to get feedback from the subgroup who will equally input. We work essentially as one team, but I just appreciate that not all members would be able to meet the demands of time constraints of undertaking the review. So it isn't a case of just checking and balancing with the subgroup. there will be an element of that, but I see it that the subgroup would be very much intrinsic in the decision making and shaping of the review.
Okay, Councillor Ratcliffe, your question.
Question, Chair, but I'd like to move to comment, if I may.
Can we take questions first?
Okay, I'll come in a moment.
Okay. Councillor Burfoot.
Thank you, Chair. I want to refer to paragraph 1.5 about the concerns that have been expressed by several sections of the workforce about the loss of expertise, which has resulted in lower standards of service and ultimately loss of pride and motivation in work. I'm aware that over the last few years there's been a decline in particularly horticultural training. So I'm just wondering if this paragraph implies that there are very few members of staff who have horticultural or grounds maintenance qualifications. So just wonder if Ash can inform us just to how many members of staff do have such qualifications, and whether there's whether courses are promoted for members of staff so that they can improve their expertise.
Thank you, Chair. Sam Grisman is in the meeting. She may be able to give you the number of staff, Councillor Burfoot, but what I would say is that we do have staff that are qualified, trained and experienced in horticulture and other disciplines. The point of that paragraph is to say that the previous review moved away from that approach and had a multi-skill approach to developing the workforce. And there is a feeling amongst the team that some of those skills have been diluted, and that's something that we're looking to address. I'll bring Sam in, if I may, Chair, see if she can add any more to that.
Samantha?
Thank you, Ash. Thank you, Chair. Yes, so all our grade 5s in particularly will have either horticultural or guild blaze expertise. Like Ash said, from the last review, it was about a more general and variety of skills with the individuals. The training opportunities that we have do amplify this, and we also have apprenticeships that go on. So there's a lot of training that does go on in-house. One example that we may have reduced in for you is tree work. So we didn't necessarily pursue tree works trainings in some avenues so that we could get the expertise based elsewhere, and the cost to reflect that as well. So the trainings do support the team, and grade 5s in particular have the horticulture and also the guilds. All our park static staff are horticulturally trained, as well as our high peak staff.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm happy to move the recommendations. I really welcome this report. I think members have to understand, especially the new ones, if I may say, that this is a legacy of the austerity years, and decisions were right at that time to save money. But of course, that has consequences, and times change and people's aspirations change. So I am happy to move recommendations 1 to 6, in the knowledge also that the pruning that had to be undertaken with ash feeding back to us won't cause any ash dieback. And I'm sure that Ash will keep us all in the loop. So happy to move the recommendations, Chair.
Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second the report and recommendations 1 to 6. I applaud the directness of the information contained in this report, and I do look forward to the member participation in the subgroup, and look forward to hearing back the reports to the Community and Environment Committee.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Hi, thank you, Chair. The first thing I'd like to say is I don't think any of us would overlook the importance of this particular service that the council undertakes. Alongside waste management, it's one of those that directly impacts upon the communities, and one that certainly has some of the greatest feedback, as it were. I think the intentions and benefits of this review, of course, will be diverse and I believe substantial. if it goes any way towards improving not only customer care, as it were, and outcomes for residents, but also helps to cement greater employee satisfaction, then I think it's a very good thing. I do take the point that Councillor Flitter raised about the subgroups, and I think it's extremely important with all member groups that they do feel a sense of shared responsibility and involvement in whatever they're taking part in, and that overall within this review there will be inclusion and cohesion between all the working elements there. I'd like to just touch upon something else, as it were, that has been mentioned in respect of the 2012 review, where there was an objective of reducing costs. I don't know if there's anything similar suggested here that might well come about, but I would just like to mention, as it were, that we are considering the employment of an external consultant, and it does seem on the face of it that this might be slightly contradictory, given the very diverse project group elements that we've got here. One would think that all the skills and you know, those elements to make this successful could come from within that group. And as I say, given that there might be some outcome of saving finance here, to spend money on a external consultancy yet again might be slightly contradictory. But I am very supportive of the overall intentions, and it does seem to me a good report to support and accept.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ratcliffe. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. 3 points I wanted to make. I'm a bit disappointed that being asked to find yet another sum of money from our reserves, this time for 30,000. I'm very surprised that this wasn't identified in when the budget was prepared for this year, because we were fully aware that we were carrying out this review. So I don't really understand why at the 11th hour we're suddenly being asked for 30,000 when it wasn't, when we weren't given any impression earlier this year when we approved the budget this would be coming down the line. And we know we're going to get some very hard decisions to make in a few weeks' time, so it does seem a little bit perverse here. On the scope of the review, very wide-ranging, but to me it lacks a little bit of focus. If I was asked what is it actually there to achieve, I think I would be hard put to find an answer. So I do think an early task is to stop this being like Topsy, because it could go on forever and ever and ever, and be very clear as to what the purpose of the review is. I noted the answer that Jackie Ellison got to her question, and that is what is not indicated in the scope. It is not, she was told quite directly that the review may be looking at other ways of delivering the service. Now, some of us know what that means. If the intention is to look at privatisation, then let's say it. Let's not discover that 3 months down the line. Likewise, on the funding of the service, is it intended that the review could look at the service becoming more expensive? If that's a recommendation, that to deliver a better service, it's going to cost us more. Let us know whether that is going to be within the scope of the report, or whether there'll be a condition put on by the project group that that's not an option. The third point I wanted to make is that to me, the project group is a little bit top heavy in management. That's obviously a matter for the officers, but we've heard that the workforce do tend to get demoralised. And I think one of the ways we could help undemoralise and motivate them is to involve them in the project group itself. There's a lot of expertise in the workforce, and I can see no reason why a member of the workforce, both non-trade union and trade union couldn't be involved in that project group, perhaps at the expense of one of the members of management. That's all I want to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Can I come back on some of those points?
Yes, I was going to come back, and after you come back, I would like to move to the vote. So yes, Ash, clarification.
Thank you for your questions, Councillor O'Brien. Just to try and address some of your concerns there, in terms of different ways of delivering the service, there's no undertone there. That doesn't necessarily mean privatising it. There are just different ways of working. And it might be a case of greater community involvement. It might mean involvement with parish councils or town councils. There are just different ways. Until we've started to look at what that can actually mean, it's hard for me to be specific. There are some areas where pest control, for example, where we could operate a more commercialised service. We could be more competitive in that market. I'd like us to explore a range of options, but there is no undertone of outsourcing. I'm happy to put that on record now. That's not what I'm talking about. And I suppose that goes back into the point where you say that the scope is not specific, very focused. Well, what I would say is such a broad service. There are a number of aspects that we want to consider. This is not a piece of work that is just for the purpose of a committee report. You know, Sam, myself, the supervisors and the staff have been talking about this for well over a year. So we have a good idea of what is likely to be involved. But putting that into a committee report, obviously we have to narrow a lot of that down. So I do take your point. I don't agree with it because in my mind, I'm quite clear what we're wanting to achieve. And I'm sure Sam would say the same as well. On your final point about the involvement of staff and it being top heavy, again, I understand your point. We do, however, discuss with staff and have plans to talk to staff throughout the process. Sometimes that'll be with individuals, depending on the nature of the role. Sometimes that will be with groups, for example, litter bin emptiers. And at other times it will be with the staff as a whole. Union involvement will be necessary throughout this process because it might mean that at some point we're changing the roles and responsibilities of those staff. So we would have to discuss it with unions. And for those members who have been familiar with previous reviews, you will know that we have a good relationship with the unions. And the reason we have a good relationship is because we involve them from the off. They're already aware of this coming in front of members, as are all the staff.
Thank you, Ash. I said I was going to go straight to the vote, but I do notice that Councillor Flitter's got his hand up. So,
yeah, just a point of information, Chair. Thank you very much. I'm reading from my old agenda, so I don't know whether it's been changed or not. But on the 4 members, I don't see an opportunity for the Greens. You've got Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem and Independent. Just wondering if that's changed or why. And just to note that I myself will be the member responsible, supported by Councillor Cruz as substitute. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, the omission of the Green Group is purely oversight, and I apologise to those members. We would very much welcome involvement.
Okay, can we move to the vote now, please? In alphabetical order as usual. So can you get your mute buttons on or your fingers on the buttons?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Allison.
Abstain.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Atkin.
For.
Councillor Bright.
For.
Councillor Buckler.
4.
Councillor Ball,
4.
Councillor Martin Burfoot,
4.
Councillor Sue Burfoot,
4.
Councillor Buttle,
4.
Councillor Chapman,
4.
Councillor Cruz,
4.
Councillor Donnelly, Councillor Donnelly,
4.
Councillor Fitzherbert,
4.
Councillor Flitter,
4.
Councillor Froggatt,
4.
Councillor Furness,
4.
Councillor Gamble,
Abstain.
Councillor Hill,
4.
Councillor Hobson,
4.
Councillor Hughes,
4.
Councillor Lees,
4.
Councillor Tony Morley,
4.
Councillor Michelle Morley,
4.
Councillor O'Brien,
Abstain.
Councillor Purdy,
4.
Councillor Ratcliffe,
4.
Councillor Salt,
4.
Councillor Shirley,
4.
Councillor Slack,
4.
Councillor Statham,
4.
Councillor Sutton,
4.
Councillor Wayne,
4.
and Councillor Wakeman.
4.
That's 34. That's 34 and 3. Sorry?
Chair.
Sorry, someone shouting
I
at
have-
chair. And
Sorry, Chair, it's me, Councillor Swindle.
yes,
I arrived late, but I am here and I was here for the whole of that agenda item. So could I vote in favour, please?
Right.
Sorry, it's my mistake. I arrived late. It's not yours. Sorry.
Yeah, that's
Yes, I
31 for and 3 abstentions.
Apologies, Chair.
that's right. Thank you. Okay, so that motion is carried. Thank you. Now we move on to agenda item 5, selection of a contractor for the council housing programme. I think the introduction is going to be provided by Chief Executive Paul Wilson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I will introduce this item and then the Director of Housing, Rob Coggins, will answer any detailed questions that members may have. As members will recall, at the council meeting in July, council did give approval to the implementation of a procurement process to select the development and management of an agent, and that process commenced on the 3rd of July. This report sets out the results of that procurement process to select a development and management agent, together with the proposed implementation plan for the delivery of a modest programme of council housing. As I hope members do appreciate, building, acquiring and managing homes for affordable housing within the various legislative requirements that exist does require us to contract with an organisation that is capable of doing so. This report therefore sets out the process that officers have been through to procure Nottingham Community Housing Association as the council's preferred provider in accordance with our contract standing orders. I'm very pleased to say that we did receive 2 very high quality submissions. However, on the basis of the bids received, NCHA did score higher than Peak District Rural Housing Association on aspects of both price and quality. The programme therefore focuses on the acquisition of Section 106 homes, empty properties, some new build on council land and also a property bequeathed to the council. Section 4 of the report sets out the framework to guide the programme so that members can be assured that officers have a very clear template to work within, and the housing team will work with NCHA to deliver the programme over the next few years, reporting regularly to C&E and the annual report to full council as previously outlined. The council's procurement advisor, Altair, have been involved in this procurement process throughout, and they haven't given their independent endorsement to NCHA as the chosen contractor. As members will be aware, NCHA are a very experienced organisation. They've worked with the council as a strategic partner for many years, and we are confident that they have a very strong track record of delivery as we move this programme forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Paul. Can we now move to questions, and we'll deal with the issue of debate later. Questions for Rob Coggins. Okay, Thank you. Councillor Flitter. Sorry, I can't hear you. You're on mute, Councillor Flitter.
Yeah, I keep tapping it, Chair. No, never mind. Yeah, thank you for that. I just want, reading 2.7 of the report, I'm just saying, oh, it's all right, I've just been unmuted again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right, I've been looking at 2.7 and note that the Nottingham Community Housing Association scored very highly. I wonder whether Rob could give us an indication of the points where they did come out very good, and if there were any points that obviously were lacking. And looking at recommendation 2, I'm wondering whether we could include ward members in discussions with the chair and vice chair of the committee. But I think that's important to keep people involved. And I'm just looking at item 4 when we talk about an annual report. My hope is that when we look at reports coming to this council, a lot of the detail can be put on the website, especially for councillors, well before that time. It would be nice to keep a continuation going, say every 6 months, where we could look on there to see the details of any reports coming through that won't necessarily have to be included in long reports. So that's basically it, Chair. It's just to get a flavour of why Rob scored them so highly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think, as I mentioned in the report, both NCHA and Peak District Rural scored the same marks on development. It was only really in the price aspect where NCHA already had a 13% lead over Peak District Rural. So it can be very difficult to recover that within the aspects relating to the management of the service, even though quality had a higher rating, if you like, than price. But I think it's hard to not to disparage Peak District Rural, because they are a very good organisation, and members know that from your work with them in the past. I think it probably came down to how and who was filling in the form rather than the actual quality differences between them. So I guess that's an issue for those organisations when they complete questionnaires relating to procurement. If you haven't got perhaps the right expert at the time filling it in, when you analyse those returns, that they will come through as perhaps not as shiny and bright as the other competitors. So I think there will be some differences, because Peak District deliver their management in slightly different ways and use slightly different systems, and that at the end of the day just gave slightly different scores between them and NCHA. In terms of the ward member involvement, I think the key thing to bear in mind is we're going to have very quick turnarounds in terms of some opportunities that come to the council through the development agent, and we need to get a relatively speedy response to our development agent so they can make informed bids quickly to developers who are trying to get an answer on a tender for certain sites. If we spread the net too wide, and I think we're trying to, we could put at risk getting enough members together and agreeing a way forward without, and not giving our agent enough time to proceed. So I'm a little bit nervous about spreading the net too wide. I think certainly we would want to talk to ward members on specific sites in developing an opportunity, but where we had to turn around a quick bid back to it on a tender basis, I prefer to stick with the chair and vice chair. In terms of the annual report, I'm very keen to keep members fully involved informed of the programme as we go forward, because it will be a very exciting programme, but again the scale of it is relatively small. So whilst we want to report to you, I think I can say quite confidently there won't be a great deal to say for a programme that's only going to get to about 50 units in this current scheme. So, you know, we'd be talking single figures for maybe a year or two. So we need to bear that in mind in terms of how quickly we might move forward and what it is we're going to tell you. Because, you know, if we show a pie chart of how many homes are built, it will be, you know, a very small number of properties in the pie chart. So I guess that's a very basic example. But if you understand what I'm trying to say in terms of how much we can tell you, we're talking about small numbers of units, and there's only so far we can take that, I think.
Take those points on board, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I haven't got anyone else wishing to ask any questions, so if we move into the debate, Councillor Furness.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move all 4 recommendations, particularly as I and Councillor Frog are involved in 2 of them. It's brilliant that we're about to start building council houses again after all these years, and I certainly look forward to seeing the first footings going in. I'm a director of Bradwell Community Land Trust, and our first 4 social houses are of 12. We have 12 in total built, but then the first 4 are nearing completion. They'll be managed for us by Peak District Rural. That was after a competitive tendering process. These are exciting times for affordable housing provision, and I certainly look forward to the developments as they come forward. Did you hear that, Chair? Hello? Can you hear me?
Sorry, I will go back. Yes, I can hear you. Sorry, I heard that.
Okay.
That was you proposing it. I thought we might have a seconder.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do you wish to speak or add something later?
Just briefly, happy to second it. I agree that it's exciting times. I think there's a wealth of opportunity out there, and it's great to see a programme running. I think the recommendations cover a nice balance of being able to move quickly when the opportunity arises, but also have that checks and balances through the committee chair and vice chair. So I'm more than happy to second it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Sorry for the delay. I very much welcome this report, though obviously it's hard to believe that we're approving acceptance of a tender without any idea of how much the value is. I find that quite strange, but no doubt others can advise me on the lawfulness of that. I'm much more comfortable with the programme, following some very helpful discussions I've had with officers. There are some buts, which I think I'd like to draw to the attention of colleagues. The programme will the programme will actually result in fewer affordable homes in the district, which is quite a perverse result of a programme. There's a technical reason, because 35 of the 52 homes in the programme actually are already affordable and paid for by developers. So as I said, it's quite a technical point. If anyone wants to sort of hear about the reasoning behind that, it's perhaps for a discussion outside the meeting. But the more general point I wanted to make, in my opinion, a council housing programme should add value to the existing work of housing associations rather than duplicate or replicate them. And that brings me on to my second point. The programme runs up to 2027, and you'll see in it that there is no reference to acquisition of land or sites. I think we all know that finding land for affordable housing is the greatest challenge that we have in our villages, and I certainly will be pressing for the programme to be expanded in the short term and the medium term to address the land issue, so we can have a shift in priorities from buying properties that are already affordable to ensuring that we can meet housing needs in those parts of the district where they are most acute. I have to say I had to smile when I saw the responsibilities being given to the chair and vice chair of the committee to agree council housing in places they've probably never been to. I understand that officers are keen to be allowed to get on with the job, but I would ask them to accept how important an issue housing is for many local members. I proposed myself to set up a contact group of members who are interested in the programme, interested in affordable housing, so that we can have informal discussions about how the programme might develop outside the confines of council or committee, whereas we all know it's very difficult to have meaningful discussion. Contact group with no political proportionality. I'd love there to be 19 Conservatives who were interested. Just anyone at all who's interested. But in having said that, I welcome this report and I'm happy to support it, Chair.
Thank you very much. I don't have anyone else down to speak. Can we move to the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Allison.
4.
Councillor Archer.
4.
Councillor Atkin.
4.
Councillor Bright.
4.
Councillor Buckler.
4.
Councillor Bull.
4.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
4.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
4.
Councillor Buffle.
4.
Councillor
4.
Councillor Cruz.
4.
Councillor Donnelly.
4.
Councillor Elliott. Sorry, Councillor Fitzherbert.
4.
Councillor Flitter.
4.
Councillor Froggatt.
4.
Councillor Finesse.
4.
Councillor Gamble.
Abstain.
Sorry, my screen froze out. Councillor Hill.
4.
Councillor Hobson.
4.
Was that count of 4, Councillor Hughes? I lost you. there.
Yes, for 4.
Councillor Lees.
4.
Councillor Tony Morley.
4.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
4.
Councillor O'Brien.
4.
Councillor Paul. Councillor Purdy.
4.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
4.
Councillor Salt.
4.
Councillor Shirley.
4.
Councillor Slack.
Councillor Slack has left the meeting.
Councillor Statham.
4.
Yeah, Councillor Statham.
4. 4.
Councillor Swindell.
4.
Councillor
You missed me
Wayne.
out.
Missed. Sorry, who have I missed?
Councillor Sutton.
I've got you down for 4.
All right.
Yeah. Councillor Swindell.
4.
Councillor Wayne.
4.
And Councillor Wakeman.
4.
We're at 34 and 1 abstention, Chair.
Thank you very much. So that motion is carried. Can we now move on to item number 6, corporate plan 2020 to 24, performance.
Yeah. Before we go on to that item, I'm deliberately unmuted myself so I could raise a point of order. The That wasn't. I think there's a problem with the broadband link from Jason's, wherever Jason is situated. I noticed that his video was freezing, and it was impossible. It was difficult to hear people's names when they were being called, and some people the name didn't come across at all. And mine wasn't announced at all until or it didn't come through. I think we need to have a different person reading out the names with a better broadband link. Thank you. That's all, Chair.
Let's see when we come to the next vote how it goes, and we might review that as we go along. There is quite a lot of merit in one person keeping all the details of the votes if its broadband improves a little bit. Okay. Did you say you didn't have the chance to vote?
No, I did vote.
You did. Okay, that's great. Okay, if we move on to item number 6, corporate plan. That is Mr. Capes, I think, to introduce that paper.
Chairman, yes, thank you very much, and good evening, members. And taking you back to March this year, when a lot of things were different, but one thing that you did back in March was set your corporate plan for the council. And as you can see from the report, there has been much good progress in the year since then. But as you would, I'm sure, imagine, progress on a number of the targets that you set for this year have, of course, been impacted by the COVID pandemic. The diversion of resources to COVID-related activities has impacted on plans, and therefore progress hasn't been as any of us would have been intended. But that said, there has been some very good progress and some considerable achievements which is set out in the early part of the report. The other part of the report, Chair, is for members to set their priorities for the next year, and recommendations 2 and 3 and the table on pages 20 and 21 of the agenda relate to that. What we're asking you to do here, Chair, is for members to choose the areas for officers to then work up some detailed actions, and those actions will then be what we bring back to you in March for the March Council meeting to be considered alongside the budget. But by giving us that steer as to the areas to work up those actions on now, that enables departments to develop their services and their service plans and their budgets in a combined process. Just to say, Chairman, that I am very grateful to members of each group for sending me their comments on a draft of this report, which was prior to the November meeting when this originally appeared, and those comments have been incorporated into the report. I and my colleagues are here to answer any queries on any of the specific actions for next year or indeed performance in the previous year. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Steve. Can we move on to any questions, please? Councillor Radcliffe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I note the comments, Steve, and you've just brought them out again and reiterated this point about the effect that the COVID pandemic has had upon our corporate plan, and you know, the outcomes, as it were, from this year. And I note in paragraph 3.2 that you talk about proposing a shorter list of priority actions for the future, and I think that's you know, very pragmatic, as it were, given that I don't think we're going to be back in our previous state of affairs that quickly. But can I just ask you, Steve, as well as having a shorter list, can I assume that the targets we will set ourselves will be achievable? I'm all for you know, promoting high standards, etc. But I think if it results in amber and red outcomes, then we're not really doing ourselves a great service.
Through you, Chairman. Yes, thank you, Councillor Ratcliffe, for that point. And certainly our aim in sort of setting the priority areas now to give us a few months to work on the precise targets for March, and to do that in parallel with the budget process, is precisely that, to make sure that they are achievable. And that's something we would all aim to achieve. I would only add that on the current year's targets, they were achievable and indeed will be achieved. It's just in many cases later than planned. I think that's the world that we're in there.
Thank you very much. Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for the consultation, Steve. It's very, very grateful to get some feedback and some input. The one thing in the corporate plan to me, and the most important thing at the moment, is our high streets, our town centres. And I'm looking at the valuable advice that we give on a one-to-one basis. Obviously, with the recovery plan, noting that and what's in there, how do we intend to capitalise and give that extra support to local retailers, small businesses, to keep them on the high street? I can see this service increasing in depth, and I was looking for how you're going to actually cope with that, and what sort of new advice and new ways of working are you going to put towards local businesses to keep them on our high streets and keep the town centres vibrant? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Flitter. And that's clearly something that is at the forefront of our minds at the moment. There's one thing that started already, which I think I mentioned at the last council meeting, which is the Shop Appy initiative, or the app, which is a means of getting the public to engage online, even if they can't come into the town centres or are reluctant to come into town centres, still shop at those businesses. And I'm pleased that that members in Matlock and elsewhere have been very supportive of that and helping to get businesses signed up for that. And that's something which I believe is something that will help put our businesses on a level playing field, if not with Amazon, then certainly put them in the market for dealing with online business. Clearly, members have also, as a second initiative, recently approved the Matlock Market Hall conversion on Bakewell Road, and that, by creating a leisure facility in Matlock, that will hopefully bring people into the town. Not immediately. This is going to be, next Christmas, hopefully, when that's open, but bring people into the town and increase the footfall, which will then help the retail side of things as well. The final point I'd add is that at the moment, and one of the reasons my team are engaged on other things at the moment is at the moment we're dealing with a lot of COVID business grants, and there's about 6 or 7 sets of grants. There's a report to GNR committee on Thursday, where I can say more about it. But currently we've got £3 million worth of lockdown grants. We've got £1.7 million worth of additional restriction grants, and we're expecting other funds as well from the government to pay out to businesses. And we're working hard to get those grants to businesses in order to keep them afloat during the period that we're in at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I want to ask a question now to try to avoid prolonging the debate. One of the targets in this year's corporate action plan relates to a programme for the installation of electric vehicle charging points, and the report is very clear that that target will not be achieved by March 2021, so it won't be achieved this year. But I note that it doesn't then reappear in our targets for next year. So I'm wondering if this is an oversight by officers, or whether it's assumed that targets that are missed roll over, or do I need to do as I have been planning to do, to introduce a formal amendment to try to have this target re-included for next financial year?
Chair, I'll let Ash comment in more detail in a moment if he wishes, but that work is still going on, Councillor O'Brien. We haven't been able to set a date to it because it's work that's in liaison with other people, but that work is still going on, and it'll certainly be carrying on in the background. Ash might be able to give some more detail on that, Chair.
Thanks, Steve. I think you've kind of covered the main points there. The work is still in progress, and we are beholden to other organisations. We do need confirmation on other parcels of land. That work has been delayed, but happy to provide an update to members once we get some more information. There's nothing to report at this stage.
Could you just explain then why if it's a priority this year, it's not next year?
The work that we started, Councillor O'Brien, is still in train. We've met the commitment that we put in for the previous year. We would like to expand, but it's not necessarily just for us to determine where that is or how many. So it's not that it's not a priority, it's just that we're unable to quantify it at this moment in time.
No, sorry, the technical point is it's an action point for this year, which the report very explicitly says will not be achieved by March next year, and therefore it drops out of the programme. So my question is, why is it not included as a priority for next year, given that it has been for this year but won't be achieved? I mean, I'll put it forward as an amendment for inclusion if it's easier to do that, or whoever wants to propose the motion might like to do that to save time.
Chair, if I may help, I mean, there's no problem in putting that as an action in the table, which is there. The only thing we can't do is put a timescale to it. So we can't promise that anything will happen at a specific timescale this year. But there's no problem in putting it in the table again. It's just that we might be having the same conversation at this point next year if external reasons mean that it hasn't been achieved in this current year. But it is still there, it is still a priority, and it is still going on, and we're happy to document that in the table if that helps. We just can't put a timescale to it. So.
Yeah, that would be fine for me if it appears in next year's programme. Is that what you're saying, Steve?
Yeah, if Ash is happy with that, I'm more than happy to include it in the table, the colourful table on pages 20 and 21, but just can't put a time scale to it. So if it might not be done next year, that's the only warning that I would give. But I'm happy to document it so it's highlighted as a priority.
Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to add, please, to the point raised by Councillor Flitter, and now I'll come to Councillor O'Brien's point in a moment. Just to assure members that the constant theme of the High Street is addressed at many board meetings that I attend with other leaders and chief execs. And so it's raised constantly at D2N2, Derbyshire Enterprise Partnership, Derbyshire Economic Recovery Board, and we've in fact tasked D2N2 to revisit the criteria for grants, because we've recently missed out on the bid for the Western Gateway, and we've asked them to re-examine and accept that there's as much importance to bids in rural areas as there is in urban areas. And if I may, I'd just like to remind Councillor O'Brien that we do have a specific agenda on climate change, and once we get our officer on board, we can accelerate the recommendations from Clearlead final report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Battle.
Am I working? Yes, excellent. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Purdy's just answered my question. I was going to ask, can we make sure that the climate change officer takes on board this electric vehicle charging point issue? And if that's what's happening, that's what's happening. So thank you very much. That was easy. Cheers. Bye.
That's great. Thank you very much. Councillor Wakeman.
Yes, I'd like to thank you for bringing this report forward. It's excellent. My two questions have been answered. Thank you.
That's good. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got 2 points of clarification, really. The first is to do with the last clean and green action, which is to carry out a detailed assessment and progress to an air quality management area and action plan as necessary. Ash, will this cover the area in Ashbourne, which is reportedly highly polluted by traffic at the moment, and even through the period of the lockdown, reported high pollution figures?
Chair, yes, that does refer to Ashbourne.
Okay, thank you. So at the end of that, we will have a decision about where there will have to be additional measures to reduce pollution in Ashbourne.
Let Tim comment on that, Chair, if he wishes. I think he wouldn't want to preempt what the report might say.
Okay, understood.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Steve. I can update on that. As Steve said, Councillor Hughes, that item is specifically about the Ashbourne issue. We're progressing to a detailed assessment now, which will give us the information we need to make a decision on whether or not an air quality management area is required. That decision will come before members. It will be a decision for members. So you'll see it all at that time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Tim. Just one other point of clarification, and that is, Steve, if you could sort of outline what the second point under prosperity is intended to do. I mean, it talks about reshaping the regeneration services to drive investment in brownfield sites. And I was just wondering what reshaping means in this respect.
Okay, have a response.
Chairman, just lost the mute button for a minute there. Yes, Chairman, this is what we talked about at the when we discussed the recovery plan at a recent council meeting, Councillor Hughes, and this is about getting staff that are skilled in regeneration to join the team. So we've got people who can help with bringing sites forward, or at least getting them ready to bring forward for employment and housing use. So it was one of the key themes in the economic recovery plan that members approved a few weeks ago was to do that. And that's the specific action that's in here, and it's to get people with the skilled regeneration commercial development skills, which we have some knowledge of, but we don't have specialists in that area at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. That's a great answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Morley.
Thank you, Chair. Are we done with questions? There's some very interesting and informative information there. If we're done with questions, Chair, I would like to I'd like to move the report as written in light of those clarifications. I noticed that the preamble, of course, is signed by Mike Hayes, which is indicative of the fact that teams are working well together of the detail. I'm also slightly disappointed to hear Dr. Capes that he doesn't want to take on Jeff Bezos with his shop happy, but there you go. So I'd like to move the report if there are no more questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hobson.
Chair, I'm happy to second the recommendations 1 to 3 of this item. As it says in the first page of this report, every plan, strategy, policy and action of the district council flows from the corporate plan. We do have changing priorities and different times because of the pandemic, and Steve has briefly alluded to it, but I would like to thank all the officers and staff of this council who worked so hard during this pandemic, dealing with the administration and distribution of grants. I'm sure we all look forward to being in a better place in March 2021 when we look at the budget and everything else. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair.
Great. So now if we can move into debate, if I've got any people wanting to contribute. Otherwise, we'll move straight to the vote as it's been proposed and seconded. Can we move straight to the vote? And we'll see how Jason gets on.
Yeah, I'll keep my camera off and see if that makes a difference. It'll scare less children at least. Councillor Allison.
4.
Councillor Archer.
4.
Councillor Atkin.
4.
Councillor Bright.
4.
Councillor Buckler.
4.
Councillor Bull.
4.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
4.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
4.
Councillor Buttle.
4.
Councillor Chapman.
4.
Councillor Cruz.
4.
Councillor Donnelly.
4.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
4.
Councillor Flitter.
4.
Councillor Froggatt.
4.
Councillor Fern.
4.
Councillor Gamble.
4.
Councillor Hill.
4.
Councillor Hobson.
4.
Councillor Hughes.
4.
Councillor Lees.
4.
Councillor Tony Morley.
4.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
4.
Councillor O'Brien.
4.
Councillor Purdy.
4.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
4.
Councillor Salt.
4.
Councillor Shirley.
4.
Councillor Slack. Councillor Statham.
4.
Councillor Sutton.
4.
Councillor Swindell.
4.
Councillor Wayne.
4.
And Councillor Wakeman.
4.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So motion's carried. We now move on to item 7, housing capital grant applications. Rob Coggins is going to introduce this paper.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to bring this report to members. It comprises 2 elements of a capital programme. The first relates to the development and improvement of affordable homes, and the second part relates to a capital programme for energy efficiency works across properties across the district. I do need to start with an amendment to the recommendation though, because when I wrote the report, we hadn't quite completed the bid to the government department for the energy efficiency programme, and I was being rather modest at the time. So the actual allocation we're seeking is 1.3 million grant from government, not the 880,000 that that's mentioned in the report. So do need to change that recommendation this evening. The first part of the report talks about affordable housing, and I think this speaks to a wide audience of housing providers, community land trusts, housing associations, the council as a new provider, having previously been approved by members this evening, as well as housing associations. And there's a good range and mix of types of housing and provision across the patch, across different locations as well. So a good programme, and one where we have funding coming in from housing associations and Homes England to support our allocation. The second part of the report, as I said, moves on to talk about energy efficiency. You'll be interested to know that from the programmes we've been working on Hurst Farm and across the district, we will have improved 297 homes at a total cost of £2.4 million. So that gives you some indication of the level of investment needed to make a big difference across Derbyshire Dales. But we're taking properties from energy ratings of E and below up to ratings of C and above, and that's quite a step change for some of these properties, and will have a massive impact for the residents, particularly in reducing their energy bills. So we've made the application to BEIS, the government department responsible for this programme, and we should hear in January if our application has been successful. There is an uplift in the contribution from providers, but not ourselves, in terms of the new figure of 1.3 million. The total programme is closer to 1.6 million, just for these 182 homes. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Ratcliffe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Rob, it has been a point that has come to my attention. So I'll ask you this question, if I may. Can you just confirm for me and clarify the use of Section 106 monies in the Peak District National Park? I thought I'd been picking up that there are constraints about that expenditure.
Thank you, Chair. Well, through you, Chair, and I know other members have asked me about this before. It's my understanding that we can use 106 funding from our plan area in the national park as well.
No, that's good, Rob. And this is perhaps a question more for Karen than you, but if you could perhaps just have it mentioned in her hearing. I note that the 979,000 for affordable housing is coming from the Section 106 monies that we currently hold. I think I would appreciate it, and maybe others too might, that towards the end of the financial year, you can, or we can be given a total, as it were, exactly how much we have spent from this 106 fund, how much is remaining, and how much we might expect to accrue over an additional period, just so that we're aware of this, because clearly it can't be an inexhaustible supply of monies.
Shall I answer that, Chair?
Yes, please.
There's a table within the report on the agenda tonight, on page 41 of your agenda, that shows the projected balances of Section 106 agreements. In addition to that, the Business Support Manager does prepare an annual report that she brings each year. So that information should be available to you, Councillor Ratcliffe.
On page 41?
Yes, at the top there's a table. And the second line down shows Section 106. It has an opening balance of £6.3 million. We're due to spend £2.9 million on the proposed capital programme that members will consider tonight, leaving a balance of £3.4 million at March 24.
Okay, right.
Chair, it's also worth noting that Mike Hayes and his team are working on an infrastructure funding statement, which provides this detail, again, more finely grained, and that I believe will come to members in due course.
Thank you very much, Rob. I haven't got anyone. Oh, I have. I've got, yeah, sorry. I think I've probably exhausted. I think we've exhausted all the questions. So into debate. Councillor Sewell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just ask Rob, please, just to fully clarify, we've got the 979 as regards from the capital programme. Just clarify the full amount that we're actually looking to recommend in the report from the 880,000, please.
Yes, Councillor Ball, sorry, it is 1.3 million. That is actually, most of that is actually grant. Only a small amount of that, which is referred to in the report, is our own funding. The vast majority is grant from government, but we have to reflect it in our own capital programme, because we'll receive grant and then spend it.
Yeah, okay, well, with that said, I just wanted to make it clear, because obviously I think if we're all reading the old papers, you know, the figures there, and I just wanted to clarify that it was the 1.3 in the grant. And I must admit that, you know, what we have done in bringing some of these houses, especially Hurst Farm Estate and the likes, up to standards and making them more habitable and economics, then I'm in full agreement, and hopefully everybody. So I'm quite happy to propose this motion recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Adkin.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to thank Rob and his team. You know, I mean, they do a good job at getting funding for these sort of projects. Like you say, we've done it at Hurst Farm. There's some ongoing works in Darley-Dale at the moment. So I'm very happy to second this and, you know, thank you very much.
Anyone wanting to contribute to the debate before we move to the vote? No, can we move to the vote then? It's been proposed and seconded. Jason.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Allison.
4.
Councillor Archer.
4.
Councillor Atkin.
4.
Councillor Bright.
4.
Councillor Buckler.
4.
Councillor Bull.
4.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
4.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
4.
Councillor Buttle.
4.
Councillor Chapman.
4.
Councillor Cruz.
4.
Councillor Donnelly.
4.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
4.
Councillor Flitter.
4.
Councillor Froggatt.
4.
Councillor Finesse.
4.
Councillor Gamble.
4.
Councillor Hill.
4.
Councillor Hobson.
4.
Councillor Hughes.
4.
Councillor Lees.
4.
Councillor Tony Morley.
4.
Michelle Morley.
4.
Councillor O'Brien.
4.
Councillor Purdy.
4.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
4.
Councillor Salt.
4.
Councillor Shirley.
4.
Councillor Statham.
4.
Councillor Sutton.
4.
Councillor Swindell.
4.
Councillor Wayne.
4.
And Councillor Wakeman.
4.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think, can I propose that we have an adjournment for about 9 minutes, coming back at 19:30 at 7:30. Thank you. How many of us are back?
Here.
It might help if I unmute myself. Sorry. Take us to 8 Capital Programme 2021 onwards. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. If members are using their old papers from the previous meeting, you might need to be aware that we have made a couple of changes to the capital programme. We've added £175,000 for the Ashbourne Pavilion, as approved by members at the last meeting. And we've updated the timing of spending on the Bakewell Road project. So not the total expenditure, just the way it's shown between financial years. So this is a very ambitious capital programme. It totals over £16 million, which is the largest programme we've seen for several years. The full programme is shown in Appendix 1, and it includes new bids totalling £4.5 million. These are detailed in paragraph 1.2 of the report and now include the £175,000 for Ashbourne Pavilion. However, as I explain in paragraph 1.6.2 of the report, this is a significant programme and it requires the extensive use of council reserves to fund it, leaving only £3.8 million uncommitted after financing this programme. That sounds a lot, but most of that £3.8 million comprises grants and contributions that may be only used for specific purposes. Financing this programme also requires the use of internal borrowing, as we don't have sufficient reserves available. That internal borrowing totals £617,000, and it's not due to be borrowed until 2022-23. It may be that in the intervening time, we find other sources of funding and we can avoid the need to borrow. However, if the council did need to borrow for these particular projects, the table in paragraph 1.5.3 of the report shows that the forecast savings arising from the schemes will more than offset the cost of borrowing, so it makes sense to borrow in these cases. Appendix 2 to the report on page 46 of the agenda shows potential future liabilities. These reflect schemes that have been identified as projects but not yet included in the programme. It's not yet possible to cost some of these projects, but the list supports the development of future capital programmes and financial planning. So this report seeks members' approval of the recommendations set out on page 33 of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Yes, Councillor O'Brien.
Yes, I have a question. Karen, when this question has been asked of you previously about using Public Works Loan Board borrowing to fund the capital programme rather than our own capital reserves, you've obviously referred to the costs of doing that, although at the moment they're fairly minimal. Do you think it, given the nature of the programme and the reservations you just expressed, do you think it would be helpful to have some sort of workshop with members over the next few months to talk through the relative benefits and disbenefits of funding via our own capital and borrowing.
Yes, certainly. I'm planning to do a workshop on finance in January. I'm just waiting to firm up the dates with the committee team. And if you like, I can put that on my agenda and make sure that that's covered. I mean, I have discussed it with our advisors, with our Treasury advisors, all in close, and they do say, you know, they've demonstrated to me that it's more cost effective to use internal borrowing, where effectively there's no interest, than to use the PWLB, even though interest rates there are low at the moment. It is still a cost. But I can cover it in the members' workshop, certainly.
Thank you very much. I don't have any more questions, so if we move to debate, Councillor Tony Morley.
Struggling a bit today. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the report as written. It is ambitious, as you say, and we're in strange times, Karen, and you've done a good job with this. So I'm going to move the report as written, but then reserve the right to come back later on in the debate, Chair. Please, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Michelle Morley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second this report, to second the report and then reserve the right to come back. I'd just like to say thank you to Karen, actually, for this very, very extensive report. A little bit difficult to understand in parts, but excellent. And I think it's very clear about the risk involvement as well. It needs studying, and I think she's very right in her own way to say it is ambitious. Yes, I appreciate that, but I also think as well that we have to look to these sorts of figures. We have to look with care, and I think the internal borrowing has been an excellent recommendation as well. So when the time is right, Chair, I'm happy to second this report. Thank you.
That's great. The time is right. I think Councillor Fetter, do you have a question?
I did have a question, Chair, but I'll incorporate all at one time if that's all right.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is an ambitious report. Since 2012, our capability has sort of decreased on capital programmes, and it's excellent news to see this ambitious programme being put forward now. I'm just, I've no objections to the borrowing. I think it's very sensible on that. The question I would ask is that the length of time that we have to repay these loans, and also are they fixed rates or varied rates? Because I know that it can expand to quite a few years before we have to pay it back. Well, just a couple of questions. One is the resurfacing of Hawley's Park in Matlock. Does that include Broad Walk? Because it really annoys me that we spent years ago £6 million on our parks between Matlock and Cromford. And what we were left with on Broad Walk is nothing but puddles. And if any work's going to be done, that is the area that needs concentrating on. That's the only comments I've got to make, Chair. I'm really thankful for this report coming to Council, and it's really nice to see that we are being ambitious and we are moving forward. And long may it rain that we have a proper capital programme in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there anything, Karen, you wanted to respond to there?
Yes. On the first question about the length of time to repay loans. When we borrow internally, the way we calculate the borrowing is to take the amount of the investment and divide that by the expected number of years that we expect the asset to be in use for. So it's effectively depreciation. So in effect, we pay ourselves back. There's no interest. So it's just, it will be a fixed rate, a fixed amount for each year for that estimated period of asset life. And if I can pass to my colleague Mike Goldsworthy, he might be able to answer your question about the paths.
Yes, if I may, through you, Chair. So the scheme at Hawleys Park is very much to look at all of the pathways in the park. Members will recall a number of years ago now, when the Parks project took place, there was a sort of surface coating that was put on the paths there, and we're looking at replacing areas of that have become worn, and also addressing areas that have become quite potholed. With Broadwalk itself, we will be looking at that. That will be included in it, and there are some drainage issues that we're well aware of that is mentioned. So we will try and pick that up in this scheme. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Burfoot.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to echo what other members have said in welcoming this excellent report and this comprehensive programme of improvements and capital schemes. But being parochial, just to endorse or repeat what Councillor Flitter said about, and obviously Mike Goldsworthy has replied to him to some extent, about the footpath in Hawleys Park. I think I think the drainage needs to be looked at, as Councillor Flitter has pointed out. I've got photographs of ducks swimming around the seats in Hawleys Park, and that's not after the flooding, but after general rain throughout the year. But I also welcome the refurbishment that's proposed for the clock tower, because that's long since been required. It's been in a rundown state for many years. And the other resurfacing scheme is the footpath on the Dimple Fields. Again, like the Hawleys Park ones, I think some sort of consultation with Matlock members would be welcome in terms of these schemes, because they do cover a multitude of things which could, which members of the public particularly approach members about from time to time. So I'd like to think that I know something about what's happening before it actually happens on the ground, so that I can perhaps influence it to some extent. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm delighted to hear some members supporting this. And I'm not wanting to boast, but I have to say that when I became leader, it was after a lot of years since 2010 of austerity years, where we had to make some very painful decisions. We've lost the public conveniences, our assets have deteriorated, and fortunately, with the turnaround of finances from government and a not too bad settlement on the annual review this year, I'm really grateful to Karen to be able to put forward this ambitious programme. And I think that we have to do this because we have responsibility as a council to try and help our businesses and our economy. And so in the capital programme, there are some schemes there that will help that regeneration. So I'm pleased to hear members supporting it, and I hope that we can vote it through, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I've got two more contributors to the debate, Councillor Bright and then Councillor Battle. Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to be parochial. I'm going to talk about the whole of Derbyshire Dales. I just want to ask that everyone will be mindful that we did all the work with the Climate Change Working Group, and one of the main aspects was to bring forward a large solar PV array. I'd like to think that we could look at that sooner rather than later, because then we could look to become a net power generator, the micro power generator, and get to where we need to be a lot quicker. That's all I'm saying, but I will be supporting the report.
Sorry, Councillor Battle.
Right, so I was just waiting on my call. First off, Richard Bright, excellent. Yeah, we should bring that forward because we get money back once we start generating. But the question that I'm sort of wondering about is it's more for Karen really. It's about the waste vehicles reserve, and that's £2.5 million. I don't know how many bin lorries we buy with that, or do we lease them? I'm wondering because we're not going to be able to sell them for very much if they're made out of, if they use diesel to power themselves, you know, like for the first 8 years that we own own them, and then you can't sell anything that's powered by diesel. So I'm just wondering if we've considered leasing bin wagons.
This was a decision we took at the time we let the waste contract, and we were taking decisions on that almost 2 years ago now. At the time, it was cheaper to buy the vehicles ourselves rather than to incur the costs of leasing. We haven't assumed any residual values, I don't think, in the calculations, so they would have to check that. But at the moment, the position is that we buy the vehicles and then they're leased by Serco for use on the contract, and the costs of the financing was included in the contract and taken into account in the evaluation.
Thank you.
I think, sorry, Councillor O'Brien, I think you had your hand up and I removed it.
I did, Chair. I too welcome this ambitious programme. I have to be parochial because I was asked to be, if you like, and I do understand that the focus on the market towns, and I very much support that approach. I do hope that in Bakewell we can look for investment over and above refurbishing the public toilets, because I know there are many opportunities in the town centre where some supporting investment from the council would be helpful. But being parochial, I was at a meeting with Hathersage Parish Council last week when I was reporting to them the project which the council is funding elsewhere in the district, and they made the point very strongly that there are other villages in the Derbyshire Dales than Matlock and Ashbourne. They were specific about. So I did say I would raise this at the council meeting, and a plea to ensure that all communities get a fair crack of the whip as the future capital programme is developed.
Great, thank you very much. I think that's all. Can we move to the vote, please? Has this motion been proposed and seconded?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Allison.
For.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Atkin.
For.
Councillor Bright.
For.
Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Burfoot, Martin Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Chapman. Councillor Chapman. Councillor Chapman. I'll move on and come back. Councillor Cruz.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
For.
Councillor Flitter.
For.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Gamble.
For.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor Tony Morley.
For.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
For.
Councillor Salt.
For.
Councillor Shirley.
For.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
Councillor Swindell.
I left the meeting for 5 minutes, so I don't think I can vote, if that's correct, Chair.
Councillor Wayne.
For.
Councillor Wakeman.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, that's great. The motion's carried. If we can now move on to item 9, which is the review of council assets, which Tim Braun's going to talk to. I think when we come to the actual voting, I would like to take recommendation 1 first and have questions and discussion about that, and then move on and take recommendations 2 and 3 separately. But I think Tim Braun will give an introduction to the whole piece.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Well, as members will be aware, this report's in response to the council motion that the council's list of assets should be reviewed to consider any connection with the legacy of colonialism, slavery and racism in all its forms. And that motion was brought to council back in July. The report's in 2 parts. Part 1 considers the review itself, and Part 2 of the report asks members to consider what should happen next in relation to the Black's Head and the associated gallows sign, which was the issue that sparked this conversation for this council. In relation to Part 1, the list of assets was made available to consultants as is. That is, it was not added to or subtracted from by officers. Officers are aware that the list is not 100% accurate in that it includes several items that are no longer owned by the council and omits at least one item which has come back into the ownership of the council, was being registered in the council's name and subsequently. In the main, these differences are because the process to add or remove these items from the asset list has not been completed. Things such as the issue of completion certificates, for example, where we've transferred assets out, such as some of the old public toilets. These inaccuracies will be addressed through a review, which is a scheduled work item within the asset management plan. A new list will then be published when this work is completed and can be made available to members. Despite these caveats, it is pleasing to report that outside the issue of the Black's Head and the gallows sign, no issues were raised by either of the consultants who were named in or who were listed in the report. The second part of the report asks members to consider what they would now like to happen in relation to the Black's Head and to the gallows sign. A number of options are listed to help inform members' thinking. This list of options is not exhaustive and nor is it exclusive. Members are asked to direct...
Everything's gone wrong.
What do you mean?
Members are asked to
What was our
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me? There appears to be an issue.
Yeah, I can hear you now. If you could just go back for about a minute before what you were saying.
Okay. Hopefully members heard the bit where I was explaining there are some inaccuracies in the list of assets, and that's accepted. It's pleasing to report that despite those caveats, it's but outside the issue of the Black's Head sign, the Black's Head sign and the Black's Head itself, the 2 consultants that were asked to give opinions raised no issues in relation to the list of assets. The second part of the report asks members to consider what they would now like to happen in relation to the Black's Head and the gallows sign. A number of options are listed to help inform members' thinking. The list of options is not exhaustive or exclusive, and members are asked to direct officers in terms of the actions that should now be taken. Finally, members are asked to remember that the Black's Head and the gallows sign are both listed structures, that any action other than the return of the head to the sign will require listed building consent. And that means, as we're a council, that we have to get the consent of the Secretary of State to any proposal. So that's an important caveat to remember when members are considering the options that are available to them. That's a very brief run through the report, Chair. If there are questions I can answer, then I will, of course, but to a large extent, this is now a matter for members to direct officers on.
Okay, if we could deal with just recommendation 1, please, as shown on the agenda. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to raise an amendment that I think, Tim, you've what you said suggests that I don't need to do so. The amendment was really to look at the, with respect to the representations made by Tansley Parish Council, highlighting the emissions in the asset register. Would additional work be carried out on that register? But from what you have said, I gather that will take place as a matter of course. I'd be grateful if you could confirm that.
Chair, through you, I can confirm that's the case. We have a meeting of the corporate property group next month, at which time we'll discuss a timescale for that work to be completed, and we'll let members know.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. Just leading on from that last question, I do get concerned, and I don't mean to be disrespectful in any way, but when it comes to the Chancellor Community Centre, Starcombs Village Hall, Heathy Lee, Gold Hill, and the Pinfold in Tansley, it's over a year now since I raised this matter with them, you know, through the corporate team. And I'm just wondering, when was the last time that we actually went through this and did this exercise? And one question that I put to officers a while ago that hasn't been answered, and that is about the sheep wash in Matlock. I always assumed through talks that this land belonged to the district council. I take it that that's no longer the case, but I've not had confirmation. Could somebody just explain that, please? And why it's taken so long to actually come to looking at this list of assets and putting it right?
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the list of assets that Councillor Fitter's named, some of those did transfer some time ago. Some of them are yet to transfer, such as Heathy Lee. That's an item to be considered by committee very shortly. In relation to all those issues, it's a combination of work required by the estates team, who report to me, and the council's legal team, and there's a process that needs to be gone through. One of those items is the issuing of completion certificates, which is an outstanding area of work and needs to be cleared up. That's very much why I'd like to discuss the matter at the next corporate property group and get agreement between those two teams as to when that work will be completed. And Councillor Fitter's quite right. I remember him raising those items at a meeting of the commercial board. It was at that time, wasn't it, Councillor Fitter? In relation to the sheep wash, I asked the same question, Councillor Fitter, after you did, and I don't have an answer to that, and I will chase that up. It's not an area of land that I'm familiar with, actually, and it might very well be I need to have a separate conversation with you about that. Was that all your questions, Councillor Fitter, or was there anything else?
No, that was fine. I've got an answer to that. I'm quite happy to discuss this further with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we haven't got any more questions, but we haven't actually got a motion to propose on this yet. So is someone willing to put forward a motion as to what we do with recommendation 1, which is essentially that the council determines what, if any, further action should be taken to review the district council's assets? Councillor Morley. Councillor Tony Morley, sorry.
Tony, you're on mute.
You're on mute. Still on mute.
Chair, I'm happy to move the recommendation. Yeah, fiddling around. Sorry about this, Chair. Yeah, I do apologise, colleagues, and apologise, Chair, for my lack of technical expertise this evening. It's an odd one because I'm not sure what further action we could take to review the council's assets. Very carefully, the recommendations from both of the consultants we supplied, so I'm not sure where we would go from here. Is it possible to move that we just accept that and move on, Chair? And do not take any further action. So what, if any, further action? It would be no further action on this one.
That was my proposal, Chair, that we note with thanks.
Yeah, okay, so we've got a proposal and a seconder there, have we? Great. Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I think we need to note that what Mr. Braun said about reviewing the list and coming back to council in a future meeting with a revised list as an action that will be taken as a consequence of presenting this list today. So we all know there are some things that need to be added and some things maybe needed to be deleted and some comments may need to be put in place. So I think I would if it's been proposed and seconded, then I would like to have an amendment to the effect that, just a minute, that in recognition of the representations received from Tansley Parish Council highlighting a number of omissions from the asset register, additional work will be undertaken to include all relevant council-owned assets across the district, with the updated list to include information where the ownership of the assets is disputed. And Chair, I think you have a copy of that amendment already in your email, and so has committee.
Thank you. Okay, we've got an amendment then, so we have to deal with that first. Have we got a seconder for Councillor Hughes's amendment?
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay. Have we got any further comment on that particular amendment? Is Councillor Ratcliffe, Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Cruz, are you got your hands up for this amendment or the substantive motion?
I'd be happy with the amendment, Chair, but I did just want to also support the fact that we're actually noting this report and noting particularly, of course, the comments made by the CVS and no doubt agreed to by the African Caribbean Association, that doing any in-depth historical research on any of these assets would, of course, not only be time consuming and costly, but it might also be fruitless. But having said that, I don't think this, and I hope again everybody would agree with me, I don't think this exercise in itself has been fruitless. I think it's been very well worthwhile. And I'd like to think that we can repeat this at each new council, as it were, when the asset list either may get amended or added to. But certainly I support the amendment.
Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Ratcliffe. I think it's prudent for it to be reviewed each new term. I think what members have to accept is that the list as listed is what the research looked at that time. It's a snapshot, and therefore any additions or subtractions, it's a moving feast, in fact. So I don't see the need for us to revisit this because it's been given a clean bill of health, so to speak. And I do thank the independent reviewers on this. So I don't think we should also note that Tansley Parish Council is in the amendment. I think we could ascribe that to any area where there's something missing or not, as the case may be. I think it's worthwhile noting and recording for review each new term, Chair. That's my view on it.
Thank you.
Chair, if I can come back, I would agree that I don't think there's a need to name any individual location.
Okay.
So I could take Gary, Councillor Purdy's suggested alteration.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hughes. I think it's right to do that because we could pick on any other area where we've probably missed a detail. So I think, Chair, picking up on Councillor Morley's motion, I think to note the report, to thank the independent reviewers' work on this, to accept the report, but that it should be reviewed each new term. I hope that's acceptable.
Okay, Councillor Cruz.
Thank you. I think my point's been dealt with. I think it's the review, particularly on additions as assets enter the council's ownership. So I think we've got it covered by Councillor Purdy's additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm just not too sure where Councillor Purdy is coming from. am I to understand then that there'll be no consultation with local members on parts of these this asset list that no longer viable? Are any alterations going to be made or not? And as the seconder to the motion, point of order that I should have been asked my view. But I'm going to take a lead from Councillor Hughes. But if it's that nothing is to be done at all, not even consult with members that know their locality, then I shall abstain from voting.
Okay.
Chair, shall I come back?
Yeah.
I've got no objection to any member being consulted, Councillor Fitter. All I'm thinking is that this report details the items on that list as is now. Obviously, it's going to change. It could even change tomorrow. So I'm just trying to make the point that we're accepting what's on the paper now. And therefore, it's a moving feast. And therefore, next week, next year, it will change. And if it's necessary to consult with ward members, absolutely got no problem with that at all. I personally don't see a need for it to be reviewed every year, and therefore I'm agreeing with Councillor Ratcliffe that it should be brought back to council each new term. I'm happy to even, review it annually if you wish, but I think that the succinct point here is it's been given a clean bill of health and there's nothing more to add to it.
Councillor Wayne.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's getting rather confusing, all this now. Basically, what we're looking to do is they've done an assessment of the assets, and what we've found is that a lot of the assets, or a number of the assets, are out of date or incorrectly identified. What we need to do is establish what the assets are. So we need, within a certain time frame now, a few months, it's brought back. I take Councillor Ratcliffe's point, then it's reviewed annually, or I think it's a bit long to go at the term of each council. So if it's done annually, but we've got to have a benchmark that we're going to start from. That's the important thing. So we're going to need something within a few months where it's updated to the satisfaction of all councillors, have some consultation with ward members, and then we can move on from there. What we don't want is to come back to it in a few months' time or in a year's time and find that it's still out of date. We've got to have a benchmark to work from. Thank you.
Councillor Burfoot, and then I want to seek a bit of clarification before we move on.
Is that me?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Sue Burfoot.
I didn't know whether he'd put a thing in to speak. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Wayne. I think we've got a bit confused on this one. I would have thought that any asset register would be kept either physically or on a computer somewhere, and when anything changed, those changes would be made straight away. I'm a bit confused about that. I would have thought any asset register would be constantly monitored and constantly changed. But I do agree that every 4 years just isn't enough. But if I could have an explanation as to why it's not constantly kept up to date, please.
Yeah, I think, can I go back to Tim Braun just for some clarification? Because when you actually look at the report, it's the review of council assets, and the background is not necessarily an asset list. It's all about the consultation we've done with the Equalities Officer. So are we looking at this, at reviewing the historical interest every year, or because we're not asked here to review the council asset list completely, are we?
Thank you, Chair. My understanding of the motion of the task I was presented with was to ask some independent people to look at the list of assets to determine whether there might be any connection with colonialism, slavery, or racism, and that's what we did. It's accepted that the list is not up to date fully. There are some reasons for that. For example, some of the examples cited by Councillor Fitter, there haven't been completion certificates for yet, so consequently the list hasn't been updated. Now, I won't pretend that the list is updated instantaneously. The days when we had resources to keep on top of that kind of work have gone, and there is a review required. Some of that review will be chasing up documentation from other teams within the council so that we can update the asset list. Some of that review will be the estates team updating the list with information they already hold. There's a mixture of jobs to be done and a number of teams that need to be brought into that. For me, as the officer concerned, I'm not certain that the removal of assets from the list is an important issue for this particular item. It's important in itself, but not important for this particular item. What is important is when any new assets are brought onto the list. And I believe that what members wanted us to do was make sure that any new members weren't associated, any new items weren't associated with colonialism, slavery or racism. And I'm very happy following the meeting of the Corporate Property Group next month to update members about a timescale within which we can review the list of assets and make those new assets available to members. I know Councillor Flitter in particular, who was good enough to raise this issue before the last proposed meeting with me. I know that Councillor Flitter has a very keen interest in the asset list, and I'm perfectly happy when we reviewed it to let him know about all the omissions as well, and to make a new list available for members if they wish. But I think that's a little bit separate from the motion that was put, which was to review it for issues of colonialism, slavery and racism.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Purdy. I think a review, we're not a massive council. We're not going to be taking on new assets, all the time. In fact, it'd be quite a rare occurrence for us to take on new assets. I think a review every term would be more than adequate. Our staff are working as hard as they can, and they've produced a great report in conjunction with the people that have helped us do it. So I don't see why every year or even more than that just sounds too much for a council of our size.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Gary Purdy and Richard Bright. I'd like to move the motion is put. I think we spent enough time discussing this, and hopefully the proposer of the original motion will accept the amendment as proposed by David Hughes, that we have a regular review.
Being once every term, is Councillor Hughes content with that?
Can I just say that I think, as others have said, we need to establish the benchmark, and I think that is the purpose of Mr. Braun's intervention, that he was intending to provide us with that benchmark, so an up-to-date asset list, and then a further review every year or every term would be appropriate, I think.
Sorry, Councillor Hughes. Every term or every year? This is a significant.
I would prefer.
I want the clarity.
Given that the assets do change, and if we have a capital program, then we are going to be accumulating new assets, quite significant new assets, then I think probably every year.
Okay, if we are moving to propose evaluation of a list or review of the list every year, then I'll need a seconder to take that amendment through.
I did second that.
Okay, can we? That's proposed by Councillor Hughes and seconded by Councillor Flitter. Can we move to the vote then, please? And the vote is simply on whether the list should be updated annually.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Allison.
Sorry, are we voting on the list being updated annually or reviewed annually?
Reviewed annually. No, sorry, updated annually, I think is what Councillor Hughes said.
I don't know. Can Councillor Hughes confirm that for me, please?
Yes, it was to update it annually.
Okay. 4.
Councillor Archer,
For.
Councillor Atkin,
For.
Councillor Bride,
For.
Councillor Buckler,
For.
Councillor Ball,
For.
Councillor Martin Burfoot,
For.
Councillor Sue Burfoot,
For.
Councillor Buttle,
For.
Councillor Chapman,
I missed the first part of the debate, so I'm abstaining.
Councillor Cruz,
For.
Councillor Donnelly,
For.
Councillor Fitzherbert,
For.
Councillor Flitter,
For.
Councillor Froggatt,
For.
Councillor Finesse,
For.
Councillor Gamble,
For.
Councillor Hill,
For.
Councillor Hobson,
For.
Councillor Hughes,
For.
Councillor Lees,
For.
Councillor Tony Morley,
For.
Councillor Michelle Morley,
For.
Councillor O'Brien,
For.
Councillor Purdy,
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe,
For.
Councillor Salt,
Against.
Councillor Shirley,
Against.
Councillor Statham,
For.
Councillor Sutton,
For.
Councillor Swindell,
For.
Councillor Wayne,
For.
and Councillor Wakeman.
For.
That's 34, 2 against, and 1 abstention, Chair.
That's great.
Chair, could you just confirm that we have just voted to update our list of assets each year, not to enter into an independent review of those assets annually?
It was to update the asset list annually.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if we move on to recommendation 2 and 3, so I'm not sure whether Tim Braun, you got any more to add?
No, I don't really. Thank you. All the information that I think is relevant is in the report.
Okay, Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. With reference to the situation we find ourselves in the moment, and in talking to the Ashbourne Town Council and to many people around Ashbourne, I think the solution to the problem we have got at the moment really is to actually have dialogue with ourselves, the Ashbourne Town Council, Secretary of State and English Heritage, and to get some dialogue going to see as to what we can define and how we can actually come to a conclusion as to what we can do regarding the black set and the gantry. Because people can say we can put it here, we can put it there, but at the same time, I think there's a lot more dialogue needs to be put into this before we actually can really make a decision. So my recommendation is that we move the motion that we have dialogue with various agencies and then come to conclusion, and we bring this back to council in the April meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Lees.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd second that motion put forward by Councillor Donnelly. It gives us time then to determine what the future of the whole of the head and the gallows, because it's all part of the listed structure. And I'm quite happy for that motion, to second that motion, that it does come back in April when we hopefully have all the answers in place so we can move forward with a full decision. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Archer.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to start by thanking Tim for the report, and particularly for coming back to us with a bit more detail in relation to the Black Set in particular on the report from the consultees, which is really useful. I've just heard Councillor Lees and Councillor Donnelly ask for time for more consultation. I'm certainly not against that, but I also have a bit of a sort of more detailed potential proposal for us to consider and maybe take back to Ashbourne Town Council. So I'd just like to present that if possible and see what councillors think of it. So paragraph 3.7 of the review of assets says that in opinion E, it asks for any alternative option that council considers appropriate. Ashbourne Town Council have also indicated they would like to engage with the district council to find, quote, a 21st century solution for imagery that is from another time and with connotations from a very different time. With this in mind, I'd like to put forward the following proposal, which has been suggested in consultation with Ashbourne Heritage Society. Ashbourne Heritage Society is sensitive to the feelings of all Ashbourne residents and thinks that on balance, the Black's Head sign should not be returned to its original site on the gallows, but displayed elsewhere in the town. This is a view supported by both of the consultees that were approached by the Derbyshire Dales District Council as part of the asset review. The Ashbourne Heritage Society suggests that potentially Ashbourne Visitor Centre would seem to be a good option. It can be easily seen, but in a safe and staffed environment. If this isn't possible for insurance reasons, for example, we could maybe have a replica displayed there and keep the original in a more safe space, such as Buxton Museum, for example. Ashbourne Heritage Society have indicated they'd be happy to provide text to accompany its display and provide context. I believe this potential solution has the following advantages. It means the head will be returned to Ashbourne where it does belong. Ashbourne Town Council will become the custodian of the artefact, but don't have to take on the potential cost of renovation, etc., because it will remain in Derbyshire Dales District Council ownership. There will be little renovation required because the head will be kept indoors. It would avoid the need for a costly and potentially divisive referendum and major consultation. The context of the head will be clear for visitors to see in the display. And finally, and importantly, the head will not be returned to the gallows, which will avoid causing offence to many visitors to and residents of Ashbourne. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Archer. Sorry, just going back to Tim Braund on the motion that we have in front of us, which is to consult with various agencies and then defer the decision till April.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think really officers need to be guided by members as to what it is we're consulting on. That's the whole point. For example, we can't really consult with the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State would receive an application for us for listed building consent to do something with it. We'd have to be specific about what that something was. We couldn't go to him with him or her with an open book and say, look, all these options are in front of us. What would you like us to do? We aren't going to get an opinion. Really, what officers are hoping for is a clear steer from members as to what you would like us to do so that we can approach those agencies and make it happen.
Thank you very much. We move on. We'll come back to that shortly. Councillor Bull.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, within this, and I obviously understand of what Councillor Donnell and Councillor Lees were saying, and obviously Councillor Archer, but obviously Mr. Braund was just saying that you know, it's up to us members to decide where and what happens. Well, in aspect, I do believe when the issue came about way back in June and circumstances prevailed that it was actually taken down, it was said within the district council that there was to be a consultation with the public as regards where it was supposed to be going. And I feel that should still be carried on with the consultation of asking the question, should it remain down and in a safe keeping, like a museum of some description, or should it be put back? I think that they are the things, and I think a consultation with the Ashbourne residents has to be that. It's all right us stating that the Ashbourne heritage, unfortunately the heritage centre itself is only a certain few people brought it up, and the founder of it, Trilby Shaw, has now passed away, unfortunately. So I'm a bit concerned as regards the heritage having a say in it. I think it's the public of Ashbourne that needs to be having a say. And I think within that, the consultation be held. And then obviously the issue would be, and if it's going to stay down, I feel, and as regards what the town council require, it to be back in Ashbourne in some form, either on the gallows or in a museum. But that is for the public to decide, I feel. But once that idea has been thought, then we need to go to the Secretary of State to say, because it is a listed asset, then is there a difference then between the fact that we would not have the head back in situ? And if that's the case, then obviously then we would have to put the application through to Secretary of State for that reason. But I think the ownership is left with District Council, but the head would return to Ashbourne at the residents' consultation of whether it goes back in situ or whether it goes in safe in a museum or somewhere safe with history with it. And that's how I feel it should be.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bull. I've just realised the time is now 26 minutes past 8. I would like to carry on this meeting so we conclude this item. Are we all in favour of continuing?
Move that.
Second, Chair.
Thank you very much. All in favour? Yep. Okay, we've got it. We'll continue then. I've got Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure we're all in favour of consultation, but consultation for the sake of consultation doesn't take us anywhere. And I agree with Tim Braun and Sue Bull. I congratulate Sue Bull for telling us what her views are, and I would like to hear from all the Ashbourne members what their views are. Not that there should just be consultation, but their views on what the future of the head should be, and that would help me arrive at confirm or otherwise my own thoughts. I do. My thoughts at this stage are, as one is a principle, that is that the head should remain in the ownership of the district council, irrespective of whether it goes back in situ or whether it's on display, and that it merits being on display again, whether in situ or in another safe place, with an appropriate descriptive, so that people of our generation and future generations can understand the context of the head. But I do think it's important that as a council we establish some clear principles. As I said, I'd like to hear what the Ashbourne members themselves specifically think on what those are before we engage in any consultation. Otherwise we'll be having the same discussion this time next year.
Councillor Hughes, did you have your hand up? And then I took it down.
I did. I was really wanting to support the point that Councillor Archer made, that it would make us returning the head to Ashbourne, placing it in a place where it can be seen, which is a safe place. That would entail perhaps getting listed building consent, but that would be quite appropriate. And I think, as Councillor O'Brien said, having consultation is all very well, but I think you have to have a fairly closed list of proposals that you consult on, and certainly Councillor Archer's proposal is one that, if we do move to a consultation, I would thoroughly approve of being within the proposals consulted upon. However, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, all the way through I've said this is a matter for the Ashbourne members to decide on, as other members are now saying. I agree with Councillor O'Brien. I don't see the worth of a public consultation. Let's imagine, for one example, that the majority say it should go back on the gallows. There would be a riot if it went back on the gallows, quite frankly, in my opinion. And therefore, I think the prudent path is to liaise with the town council. I hear some nervousness around the Heritage Committee or Society, but I think probably they could be involved. I hear what Tim says about no point in consulting with the Secretary of State. But the thoughts were coming around that, Tim, in respect of what the state of the head is at the moment, what the state of the gantry is, and what work needs to be done on it. And that's where I think the members were coming from with that kind of thought process. So I think in simple terms, one, it has to go back into some kind of glass case museum with, as Councillor Bryan says, a descriptive on its history. And then people will see it's not really a black head when they see the actual history of it. So I hope the members at Ashbourne can come up with a motion, because I do think it's their call on this one. It's their town, it's their asset, and they are representatives of the people of Ashbourne, and therefore, without wanting to pass the buck, so to speak, I do think I'd like to hear a solid motion coming from the four members.
Councillor Burfoot.
Thank you, Chair. Well, two things really. I think Tim Braun's quite right that we need a clear steer on this. And if we go to a deferral, we'll just be going through the same debate again, to be honest. We have had a proposal put forward by Councillor Archer, which I think is a good proposal, and I would like to second that. I think whatever our opinion is about the question of the future of this Black's Head, it is a controversial topic, and my feeling is that it's far wider in importance than just for Ashbourne, to be honest. I think we have to appreciate that some artefacts are offensive, and if you want my opinion, I find this Black's Head offensive, and the last thing I would want to happen to it is to go back on the gallows. I think Councillor Purdy's quite right that it should be in a museum, it should be in a glass case, and the history of it should be explained, and then people can make their own decision as to what they think of it. But when I was looking at all the options, I could come across a reason to not accept options A to D. Now, if you want me to go through why I think that, that's fair enough. I think we've got an alternative option that Councillor Archer has come up with, and I think that would be the way forward. But I also would like to hear the opinions of the Ashbourne members. You know, you do live in Ashbourne, the Black's Head is in Ashbourne, and you must have an opinion of it. And basically, I think it's kind of pushing the decision to the public. You must have an opinion, and I'd like to hear it.
Okay, Councillor Sue Burfoot, you were seconding a motion which hasn't actually been put, but there's already a different motion on the table, so you can't have two motions running against each other. There's a motion put forward by Councillor Donnelly.
If I may, Chair, could I ask that you ask Councillor Archer if he had put that forward as a motion, because I believe that he had done. I believe that that was option A, an alternative option, and he made it very clear what his proposal was. So as far as I was concerned, that was the first motion put forward.
You were incorrect in that. The first motion was proposed by Councillor Donnelly and second by Councillor Lees. And then we moved on. And the discussion, the proposal that we've got to discuss in front of us, in which we will have to vote on, unless it's removed, is to carry out further consultation. And we heard from Mr. Braun the issues that he sees behind that. So what we need to do is just concentrate on that motion that's in front of us. Councillor Lees.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you able to shed any light or bring any flexibility?
Yeah, I'd just like to add to, if Councillor Donnelly is in agreement, that the head should remain within Ashbourne, not in a museum in Buxton or elsewhere. It should actually be somewhere in Ashbourne, should it not go back on the gallows. And, you know, I'd like to add that to the proposal, that it does remain in Ashbourne under the guidance of the Ashbourne Town Council. Thank you.
Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think talking with local knowledge, has been mentioned before, and Sue Bull referred to it. We're talking about the Heritage Centre, which is rarely opened. I've great knowledge of the Heritage Centre because I was a member there myself and my wife for many years. She actually worked there stewarding as well. To put an item like this in there would not be very secure, would not be very safe. We're talking about two items here. We're talking about the gallows as well. We're talking not just the head. Yeah, I'm not saying that it has to go back on the wash. Nobody's ever said that. What we're saying is that we need to look at costing and with ourselves and what it's going to cost, and then it's up to probably the Ashbourne Town Council to say we will take it or we won't. It's one of my reasons for bringing that forward. I think it's it's more involved than this really than just saying, oh, put it here, put it there. I think before we do that, we need to look at the costings. Very important, I think, the maintenance of it, the insurance of it. And as yet, we have nobody sat down and said, well, this is going to cost. So maybe at some time that the Ashbourne Town Council said, well, we don't want it again. We're not going to have it. So, it's not a question of dragging it back in Ashbourne and put it on the gallows again. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I wouldn't think it should, and I think it shouldn't either. But I think it's got to be, before we can actually say it comes back to Ashbourne, it needs to be sustained as to where it's going to be housed in for the future. So, that's one of my attitudes to that, really. Thank you.
Can we go back to Councillor Archer? And your...
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I'm more than happy to go over my views on it, and I'm also happy to try and clarify my proposal and maybe alter it slightly in relation to what I've just heard. So first of all, my views on it are that I've been born in Ashbourne and brought up in Ashbourne. As I grew up, it was a part of my heritage, and I was quite fond of the object. So it was part of Ashbourne, a key part of Ashbourne Town Centre, something that was part of the identity of the town. As I then got older and went off, did history and politics degrees, and work in a multicultural school, hear views of lots of different people from different backgrounds, I've grown very much to see the object as something that I find offensive, and I know for a fact many other people find offensive. And I personally feel very strongly that I don't want that object displayed in my town. I think it gives a poor impression of the town. And therefore, having said that, it is absolutely very much part of the town's history and heritage, and therefore it should 100% remain in Ashbourne. And I'm more than happy and completely agree that Ashbourne Town Council should become custodians of the head, but I think the district council should keep ownership of the head, and therefore any costs, etc., that come up in terms of needing to renovate it, the district council can be responsible for, but they can hand over the custodianship of it to the town council. In relation to my proposal, therefore, what I'm proposing in relation to the head is that we talk to and engage positively with the town council as they've asked us to. It's very interesting that in their statement they mentioned the idea of it being in different locations of the gallows. They mentioned that the imagery is from a different time, and its connotations from a very different time. So I think the town council seem to be indicating there the opinion that they probably feel it's not right to return it to the gallows, and that's an opinion I certainly think is correct. So the proposal will be that we talk to Ashbourne Town Council, the consultation with them, and potentially with obviously the people of Ashbourne as well, of course, is where we put it, but we should not be considering putting it back on the gallows. The consultation should be where we put it other than the gallows, in my opinion. As the district council, we've consulted external agencies in this who both explained that they don't believe it's right for it to go back on the gallows. So I think we should take that. That's our consultation. Our conclusion from that is it doesn't go back on the gallows. It does go back to Ashbourne, but in a different location. That whatever that location may be needs to be decided with consultation and working positively and engaging positively with Ashbourne Town Council. So hopefully that helps to clarify my view and hopefully clarify what I'm proposing as a motion.
So how close, Councillor Donnelly and Councillor Lees, because you've got your motion is there, and are you to Councillor Archer? Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Chair. I can't see that what Councillor Archer is proposing is much different to what we're proposing. Actually, I think the the dialogue is imperative that it is with the district and the town council to say when it can come back, if it can come back. I'm not saying it can't be within the ownership of the district council. That's fine. No objection to that. I certainly would say it's not going to be put up in the gallows ever again. I can't imagine anybody in Ashbourne actually even asking for that. But so, I mean, I can't see what the differential is, what myself and Councillor Lees are proposing, is what Councillor Archer is proposing. I think it's the same thing. We're all talking about getting around the table, seeing what we can do and seeing what the cost and everything else involved, really. And I think and obviously we need clarification from the town council to see if they actually would agree with what we're saying and taking the thing on. I would also be interested to see what Councillor Bull's opinions are on this as well.
I know
as a member of the Ashbourne Town Council.
I've got a number of people that want to speak on this subject. What I'm not ignoring you. I'm trying to think who I've got. Councillor Gamble, Councillor O'Brien, and I'm just trying to flesh out exactly what motion might go.
Sorry, I'm on that list as well. Councillor Allison wants to speak.
Beg your pardon. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Wayne as well. I'm still on the list. I'm just trying to thrash out some sort of motion that we can go forward with as a first stab. And I think ultimately that
Sorry, could I just suggest something, that we actually allow Councillor Allison, as she is a prominent and she is very much in the Ashbourne area, to sort of speak, and she might have something that might take us further.
Okay, Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to what everybody said, and I listened with interest of what Councillor Bull said about having a consultation with Ashbourne residents. What I'd like you to take into consideration is that Ashbourne is our local market town, and our children are educated up there. We are part of the educational community, if you like, up there. Our children are going there on a daily basis. So if you want to consult with people that are part of the Ashbourne community, you have to consult with the villages that use that as their market town as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, through you, may I ask a question of, I'm listening with great interest to the debate, and congratulations for the positivity coming across, so thank you for that. Through you, Chair, may I ask a question of Councillor Archer? I'm unclear as to the relationship between the Ashbourne Heritage setup and the Ashbourne Council. I'm beginning to sense that they're not singing from the same hymn sheet. Could I have clarification on that? Also, again, a point of accuracy: in neither of the reports of the Independents does the head even get mentioned. So that's by the by. But can I get a head round? What's the relationship?
Can I respond to that, Chair? Is that okay? Okay. So first of all, in relation to the Heritage Society, when I was trying to come up with an idea in terms of how to put forward a proposal, I just thought they would be an interesting group to consult, and their suggestion that came back I thought was a really sensible suggestion, and therefore I thought I would use that as part of my proposal. So really, I'm just mentioning the fact that I consulted them, and I thought their proposal was good. It fitted in with my thoughts on it, and therefore that's why they're mentioned. That's the only reason. It's not no other reason other than that. It's just their opinion matched with mine. In terms of the consultees not mentioning it, I accept that in the original report there was no direct mention of the Black's Head. However, Tim Braun did circulate before the last meeting some extra detail on the Black's Head from the DDCBS, which said, quote, "On a personal note, I would be happy to see the pub in Ashbourne renamed and the offensive imagery removed. This is a good example of something that is simply an offensive anachronism, which is likely to cause distress to both visitors and residents of the town, whatever the history and tradition is." And in relation to the other consultee, the African Caribbean Community Association, Chesterfield District, I've also followed up with them because obviously they hadn't commented, which I thought was surprising on this particular part of the asset review. So I followed up with them in terms of asking them for a comment on the Black's Head. And again, to quote them, from our perspective, we advocate for the positive depiction of black people and recognise that history steeped in racism has meant that the negative portrayal of black people. We agree that this object should be placed in a museum as its role in perpetuating racism should be remembered. So I think it's fairly clear that both of our consultees do feel that the head absolutely should not go back on the gallows, and that is something that I support, and that is why I'm proposing we work with Ashbourne Town Council to come up with an appropriate other location where its context can be explained, but it can be kept in Ashbourne. And just very quickly in relation to consultation, if we are going to consult the people of Ashbourne, which I have no objection to, of course, as I said earlier, I am a person of Ashbourne and it's a part of my town's heritage, you completely get that. But we also have to recognise that there are many other people that come to Ashbourne, and it's not just about Ashbourne. We need wider consultation as well with other groups, and so on. And that's important, I think, to remember that we can't just be looking at it just purely from the people of Ashbourne's point of view, because we have many visitors to Ashbourne and people from very different backgrounds and cultures come to Ashbourne, and we have to take into consideration their views of the subject too.
Yeah. That's fine. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Chair.
We need to make some progress because we're talking around the subject and we're not really getting, I don't think, a coalescence around what we want to be an outcome. The sense I'm getting is not surprisingly, that the head doesn't go back on the gallows. So we got that certain. I think it's probably then a question as to whether we pursue Ashbourne Town Council or whether we stick with Derbyshire Dales District Council retaining ownership on the basis that it will be displayed within the Ashbourne area.
Chair, may I just come back?
Yes. Sorry, who we got? Sorry, who's coming back?
Councillor Bull, sorry. I was just making the point that the town council did send a representative at the last meeting and spoke. Now they've actually sent an email in, and I don't know, I have put over to James now. I believe everybody should have had it, but can they read through it again? And I think if the point is there, then the actual recommendation would be that the head stays in the ownership of the district council, working alongside the town council as to its restoration work and business, and then making it go into a safe keeping for people to be able to view it when they wanted to, with history of it. So that was the proposal in sense on that side. But working, the district keeps ownership, but goes back into the town council and working in cohesion with the town council. But it is there on an email that we have all had, and they wanted to reiterate that. And I don't think in the sense that it should be for us, for individuals, there are our thoughts and everything else, and it is an Ashbourne thing, and the town council have made their point about it. And I think that's how it should be. If it goes to that, the district have dialogue with the town council to come for a better case of where it should be. Sorry, Chair, thank you.
Okay, if we go, sorry, Mark, Councillor Salt's put some potential wording on there that might be suitable. I would like to just clear up a few other people that haven't had the opportunity to speak. Councillor Wayne.
Thank you, Chair. I take up Councillor Archer's point about it's not just the Ashbourne, although it's in Ashbourne. Ashbourne is a big tourist area and it attracts a lot of people, and more people are coming in as they in the staycations, etc. And I think we should put as a criteria, I'm quite content for it to stay within the ownership of the Derbyshire Dales District Council, and Ashbourne Town Council be given the custody, let them be the custodians. But we need to put a definitive understanding on that it will not be put back up. it cannot be displayed publicly externally up on the gallows or anywhere else out of the prescribed building. And I think we should put it back to them to let them make a decision where they think it is suitable. I was minded towards Councillor Archer's Heritage Society, but if it's not open enough and there's not enough people to go and, people can't have a visibility of it, I think we need to look somewhere else. But I do think the consultation should be broader, like Councillor Allison said, but we need to put a condition that it will not be put back up. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to reiterate, to go along with what Paul Cruz has just said to us, which I think is very similar to what Sue Bull has said, that there is a consensus that that the head remains in the council's ownership, that discussions take place between the town council and the Heritage Society over an appropriate place for it to go on safe public display, with a carefully worded information panel which explains the history and context of the structure. I'd hope that Tim or James could help us with putting some words down on the screen which reflect that consensus, which I think there is. And this proposal is taken forward for discussion with the Town Council and the Heritage Society.
Okay, can I go to Councillor Gamble? That will give just James some time to see if he can formulate some words.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I was going to speak really in favour of Councillor Archer's proposal. I thought it was a very sensible measure to come through, and I was really, and I think, as you say, we seem to be building this consensus that it's not going to go up. So, just as a practical thing, I think if we are on that consensus, to have something worded so that one of the next moves that we instruct the officers to do is to put an application into whoever's in charge of Grade 2 listed structures. Sorry, English Heritage, to actually start that process now, because obviously I think we are reached a consensus that it's not going back up. So I think we need to start that process, and that, yes, I would like us to negotiate preferably with the Town Council and the Heritage Society. I think there are some merits to the Heritage Society in that they are going to have the ability to put it in context. Probably they have. I'm presuming that as a Heritage Society, they are used to sort of contextualising items, and I think that would be a good body to go with. And I think it was a shame, actually, really, that this report, that we're doing all this now, that maybe that the 4 Ashbourne people couldn't have been got in a room somewhere in a Zoom meeting and actually thrash some of this out beforehand. I think that would have been probably very helpful.
Thank you very much. Could I go to Councillor Hobson, please?
Chair, thank you. It's very interesting to hear everyone's opinions, and I do think we're going towards a consensus. This is a district council asset, but obviously it's homes in Ashbourne. What Councillor Donnelly, who moved the first motion, is he happy to change his motion? There's been various proposals put back and forth.
Sorry, Councillor Atkin.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at the chat bar. I think Councillor Salt's got it right with the wording that Council recommends that officers consult with Ashbourne Town Council and associated parish to determine and accept a mechanism of the return, future ownership, maintenance and public presentation of the Black Head and Gallows. So, I mean, if Councillor Salt wants to move that as an amendment to that, I'm quite happy to support that, Chair.
Okay, we currently still have Councillor Donnelly and Councillor Lee's proposal on the table. Are they happy for it to be amended along the lines of Councillor Salt?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've looked at, just read the chat line on Councillor Salt's proposal. I think we're not far off agreement on that, really. I think we, you know, we can come to some conclusion on it, I think.
Can I come in, Chair, please?
Right?
Yes.
I think it's the best outcome, really. I think that we need to. We probably will be consensus. It's never going to back up again. But the point is that I think the people of Ashbourne would appreciate it back in Ashbourne under some secure situation, maybe the town hall or the library, or we can put it where it's going to be secure and for the perpetuity of the people of Ashbourne. Thank you.
Someone said they wanted to come in.
Sorry, that's me, Councillor Salt, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. The only thing I would add to what I've put there, and I'm only really trying to just move things on and get something that the council can move forward with. There's clearly a consensus from the district council that it shouldn't be returned to the place that it was, on the gallows in the middle of town, and that's fine if that's what the district council wants to say and the district council wants to recommend. But I think it would be unwise to go to Ashbourne and say that this can't happen and take that decision out of their hands and take that decision away from them, or at least consult with them on it, because I think you're in an area there where you're going to get conflict. So, I mean, from what I've put down there, I'm happy to include, if it finds any favour, and I'm really not far from what Councillor Archer says. I do like his recommendation. The district council recommends that future presentation does not return the gallows to the head and the gallows to its former site.
You will see from the chat bar there are some proposals, both from Councillor Salt and also from James McLaughlin, as to the possible wording. And that's that the Black's Head remains the property of the District Council, and Black's Head's not returned to the previous location over St John Street. And that the council recommends that officers consult with Ashbourne Town Council and associated parish councils to determine an acceptable mechanism of return, future ownership, maintenance, and any public presentation of the Black's Head and Gallows.
As some person is up for information, can I just come in quickly on that? Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, you've had quite a lot of say, and I'm trying to actually just progress the point forward as much.
I haven't said much. Can I put something forward then, which I hope maybe Councillor Archer was maybe going to bring forward? So could we just have some sort of wording?
Sorry, Councillor Gamble, you've already contributed to the debate.
Other people have spoken several times. I just thought if we could have something about the Heritage Society in there,
sorry,
that'd be perfect.
Thank you. I'm trying to. We could be here all night and not make any progress. Is anyone content? Councillor Donnelly and Councillor Lees, you've currently got the motion. Are you content to amend your motion to the wording that James McLaughlin has put up?
I am, Chair, yes.
Yes, I'm happy with that, yeah.
Chairman, I included erroneous wording in that first item. I don't think there is consensus that the head remain the property of the district council indefinitely. I think that's the element that would probably be subject to consultation with the various organisations that have been referred to. So if you withdraw that first item 1, we'll take the second point that I've shared, that the Black's Head not be returned to its previous location of St John Street. And then effectively what I've done is copy and paste what Councillor Salt shared earlier on, which is the council recommends that officers consult with Ashbourne Town Council and associated parish councils to determine an acceptable mechanism for the return, future ownership, maintenance, and any public presentation of the Black's Head and Gallows.
Councillor Cruz?
I think we are making some progress, so thank you for allowing me to come in. I'd be grateful if we could add in and that we would consult with the Heritage organisation as well in Ashbourne, and they were part of the consultation that is going to take place. So that was added to the wording, as well as town and parish councils.
this is going to go on all night. I'm not going to ask anyone else to speak.
Could I raise a point of order, if possible, please, Chair?
Yes.
Just my understanding was that I did put forward a motion, quite a detailed motion, but because the Councillor Donnelly and Councillor Lees were invited to speak first, my motion is not going to be considered or voted on. Going back to their motion, surely if it's just down to who you call in first, surely if there's two different motions proposed, there should be a way for councillors to determine between the two rather than just voting on the first one. And just to follow up with that, really what we seem to be arriving at is pretty much what my motion said, that we keep ownership, we give custodianship to the council. It doesn't go back on the gallows, but we consult and work with the council to find an appropriate place, which is pretty much essentially what my proposal said in the first place. Thank you.
Okay, point taken. Although I can't quite see the point you're raising if we're there. Okay, I'm quite happy to, if Councillor Burfoot, Councillor Hughes, or Councillor, I think Councillor Cruz has contributed already. If there's anything further you want to add, otherwise I think we're going to be, we need to move to the vote.
Chair, I would like to, if the substantive motion is that we are including in the discussion with the council future ownership, and that Derbyshire Dales does not continue to own the head, then I would like to raise an amendment to that motion to take out the words future ownership from that list of discussion items, and to include the Heritage Society as an organisation that would be consulted. And Derbyshire Dales District Council, for that matter. I don't see that. I think Derbyshire Dales District Council has an interest and needs to be consulted on what on the final decision about the location of the head. So my proposal is that my amendment to this motion is to take out the words future ownership and include Derbyshire Dales District Council and the Heritage, Ashbourne Heritage Society, or what it's called, in the people who are consulted.
Okay, Councillor.
Can I support that? Can I support that amendment, Chair, please?
Yes, can we just wait, because we're not in a, sorry, yeah, Councillor Burfoot, sorry. Yes, you can, but it's an amendment.
Could I explain why? I think it is a council asset, and I think we have a responsibility for that asset and the context and its history. And I think we need to retain the responsibility for it rather than have a discussion over the possibility of transferring its ownership to another body. Who looks after it on a day-to-day basis is a totally different question. So I would very much support David Hughes' amendment that the council is clear that it retains ownership of the head.
Okay, Councillor Atkin.
Yes, Chair, thank you very much. I think Councillor Salt has summed it up. So, you know, I think the amendment Councillor Salt's put forward is very pragmatic and works. So I would like to think people would support that. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I don't want to butt in, but I could probably, if the word ownership was changed to custodianship, then that would remove any ambiguity about the fact it would ever go out of the ownership of district council. The custodianship would just be where it lives or who looks after it. The ownership is with the district council, so if we change ownership to custodianship, then that should get rid of that problem.
Okay.
I'm quite happy with that, Chair.
Okay, can we just could James just do some rewording, and then we'll go to Martin Burfoot, and then I really want to get to a position where we can go to a vote on something.
Thank you, Chairman. So Councillor Hughes and Councillor O'Brien proposed an amendment, which Councillor Salt has indicated that he would be happy to accept within the wording that's been provided in the chat box. So that would, where it says future ownership, it would be replaced by custodianship. If Councillor Hughes and Councillor O'Brien are content with that, then I think there was a further point about consultation with the Heritage Society. Is that correct, Councillor Hughes? I'm struggling to keep up with all the various contributions that are being made in this meeting, to be quite honest. You're on mute, yeah. Councillor Hughes, sorry.
Sorry, I thought we were taking out the words future ownership. I still see them there.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to type them down, Councillor Hughes. I'm just asking you if you were in agreement with what Councillor Salt had suggested, that he would be happy for the removal of ownership to be replaced by custodianship. So he's accepted that. But I wanted to check whether you'd made reference to the Heritage Society and what you'd proposed. I am struggling to keep on top of everything that's being said.
I think I would like the Heritage Society to be involved, because they would be able to provide the appropriate wording to go with the head. And if the proposal is that officers, that is Derbyshire Dales officers, consult with Ashbourne Town Council, then I'm happy about that as well. So changing ownership to custodianship, I would be happy with. I would prefer the Heritage Society to be involved in the consultation and potential wording of the what is provided with the head.
Councillor Salt, through you, Chair, are you content with that?
Thank you. I must point out, as a point of order, it's not my proposal. I just offered some wording. It's actually Councillor Donnelly's and Councillor Lee's proposal. And I have to say, it now actually forms virtually identical words to Councillor Archer's proposal. So if
Councillors Donnelly and Lee's, Chair, are happy with what's been set out, I think we have a way forward, which, based on the speeches being made by everybody, I think everybody's probably in agreement on, although we'll put that to the test in a moment. But it seems like the recommendation is for officers to consult with Ashbourne Town Council, the Heritage Society and associated parish councils to determine an acceptable mechanism for the return, future custodianship, maintenance and any public presentation of the Black's Head and Gallows. Is that acceptable to Councillors Lees and Donnelly?
I think you've done a great job there, James. yeah, I'm quite happy with that. I think I think most people in Ashbourne will be as well. I'm glad you've unravelled that, because it's very, very, very complicated. Thank you, James. I know Stuart wants to say.
Yes, I'm happy with that, James. Thank you.
Okay, can we move to the vote now?
May I say also, James, it's very, very close to Councillor Archer's proposal as well.
Just a point of order, Chair.
Yes.
I don't believe that the mover and seconder of the amendments have been asked to withdraw so that you can accept one proposal.
Okay. Point taken. The movers and seconders being Councillor Hughes.
Well, I've had my say, so I think it's Councillor O'Brien. Okay, so we're in agreement. Yes, we'll withdraw.
Okay, that's good. So we can go to the vote, which is good. Okay, all those in favour? Sorry, we go to the vote one at a time. Sorry, not a show of hands.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Allison. Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Atking. For. Councillor Bright.
He's gone.
Gone. Okay. Councillor Butler.
For.
Councillor Ball.
For.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Bottle.
For.
Councillor Chapman. Councillor Chapman here. Councillor Cruz,
Sorry, I'm unclear on what I'm voting for, so I'm going to have to abstain. Apologies. Unclear process.
Councillor Donnelly,
For.
Councillor Fitzherbert,
For.
Councillor Flitter,
For.
Councillor Froggatt,
For.
Councillor Furness,
For.
Councillor Gamble,
For.
Councillor Hill,
For.
Councillor Hobson,
For.
Councillor Hughes,
For.
Councillor Lees,
For.
Councillor Tony Morley,
For.
Councillor Michelle Morley,
For.
Councillor O'Brien,
For.
Councillor Purdy,
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe,
For.
Councillor Salt,
For.
Councillor Shirley,
For.
Councillor Statham,
For.
Councillor Sutton,
For.
Councillor Swindell,
For.
Councillor Wayne,
For.
and Councillor Wakeman. 34 and 1 abstention, Chair.
Okay, so that motion is carried.
Jason, did you get mine? It's Dave.
Sorry, I didn't get an answer.
Can you hear me now, Jason?
Yes, I can hear you now, yes.
It was an abstain. It was an abstain, Jason.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So, Chair, that's 34 and 2 abstentions.
Great, thank you. Can we now move on to item 10, test and trace support payments? Karen?
Thank you, Chair. The report's mostly self-explanatory. I've just got a couple of updates for members. The figures have now changed slightly. So as at last Friday, we'd received 202 applications. We'd made 26 payments, one of which was discretionary and 25 mandatory. And that means that 176 applications were not eligible. We think that confirms that the NHS is encouraging people to claim from us where there's no entitlement. I can also confirm that the benefits team now has access to the online eligibility checker, but problems persist and they still need to make contact by telephone in many of the cases. And you may now have heard that the scheme has been updated so that people can apply via the app, the Test and Trace app, as well as by the contract tracing people. And we're waiting to see what impact that might have. So we're just asking you to note the urgent decision and the progress. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions for Karen? Councillor Atkin?
Yeah, I'm quite happy to remove the recommendation as set out in the report.
Okay, Councillor Chapman?
Thanks, Chair. Just a question for Karen. The government funding made available was it 35,000, something like that? If we'd have had a flood of approved applications, how would we have defined who would have got the grant? And at the same time, Chair, I'm happy to second this because it's important that a virulent disease like COVID-19 doesn't wait for a committee to come and sit before it affects people. And I think we have to have the ability to react quickly. So I will second this motion.
Thank you very much. So was there a question there that you needed an answer to?
Yes, it was just to ask Karen how we would have discerned who got the grant.
Well, at the moment, the funding has been way in excess of any applications. I believe that's not been the case at other authorities. And when they've raised this with the NHS and the government, they've been told that there'll be additional funding for mandatory applications, but not for discretionary applications. So those authorities have dealt with that on a first come, first served basis, I believe. Or maybe some of them are paying for it out of their own funds, but we're nowhere near that. We've only paid one discretionary application so far out of an allocation of £13,000.
Okay, Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just a quick clarification? I'm not sure if Karen's already said this. Have they actually updated the software that was due to be done so that you can check the online eligibility? And also, I'd just like to make a quick comment as well, because I just really like to thank the frontline benefits staff who have managed to get some of these payments through under what seems like really, really difficult circumstances. And, you know, that really can only be attributed to the shambolic test and trace system this government has implemented. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ellison. Yes, we do now have access to the online eligibility checker, but the benefits manager tells me that it's problematic, so they're still having to make telephone calls to the NHS to check eligibility. He also told me that it's taking almost as long to process each one of these applications for payment through the process as it does to do a benefits claim, which surprised me, because if you've seen the benefits claim form, it's pages and pages long. And I will pass on your thanks for the team. They've been really good at taking this on board, especially the benefits manager, Paul Radcliffe. And considering that, you know, the benefits function is outsourced, they approached me straight away, offering to, you know, take a hold of it and move it forward. So I'll definitely pass on your thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Karen, because I can imagine it must have been very difficult for them. Thank you.
Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Councillor Allison, take the words out of my mouth. I wanted to pay tribute to Karen and the team. There's been an awful lot of pressure since COVID with all of these regulations coming out and requirements from government that are expected within days, literally. So they've put an awful lot of work in, and I know for a fact that some have been working evenings and weekends. So I think all members owe them a debt of gratitude. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, obviously, yeah, it's a ditto as regards to thanks given. But as with our committee, as Councillor Chapman said, you know, this is obviously something that's already had to go by. They came and said, can we go on and do it? Which we do need to get on and do it, because it's the public out there that need this money, and it is of need to them. But yeah, I am really pleased and thankful that our staff are taking this on and doing it, because it's not very easy. I know Karen gets in touch and says this new thing come through and it's all right. The government says, oh, I'll give you £13,000, distribute it how you can, but they don't give you any guidelines, and I think it is a bit difficult, and it is hard work for all the staff doing it. So I do thank them myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got only one other person to speak, and that's Councillor Wakeman.
Yes, Chair. I hope you, Karen, will thank them on behalf of every councillor. I'm sure we all want to share our thanks to them for the excellent work they've done. So I hope it will come from every councillor, not just one.
Thank you very much. Can we now move to the vote?
Councillor Allison.
Good list. Thank you.
Councillor Allison. Councillor Archer.
Four.
Councillor Atkin.
Four.
All right, it's gone all quiet.
Councillor Atkin.
Four.
I think Councillor Bright is left.
Yes.
Yeah. Councillor Buckler.
Four.
Councillor Bull.
Four.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
Four.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
Four.
Councillor Buttle.
Four.
Councillor Chapman.
Four.
Councillor Cruz.
Four.
Councillor Donnelly.
4.
Councillor Fitzherbert,
4.
Councillor Flitter,
4.
Councillor Froggatt,
4.
Councillor Finesse,
4.
Councillor Gamble,
Sorry, 4 and ditto on the thanks.
Councillor Hill,
4.
Councillor Hobson,
4.
Councillor Hughes,
4.
Councillor Lees,
4.
Councillor Tony Morley,
4.
Councillor Michelle Morley,
4.
Councillor O'Brien,
4.
Councillor Purdy.
4.
Has Councillor Ratcliffe left? I think yes. Yeah. Councillor Salt,
4.
Councillor Shirley,
4.
Dathan,
4.
Councillor Sutton gone? Yes. Yeah. Councillor Swindell,
4.
Councillor Wayne,
4.
and Councillor Wakeman.
4.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So that's carried. Okay, now item 11, exclusion of public and press. That includes obviously people who are in the room with you, who are not councillors. I guess dogs and cats can probably stay, but others not. Can we all vote in favour of quickly with a raise of hands for the exclusion of public and press? Yep.